Welcome back to another episode of Trainer Spotlight. This one with a really, really great guest. I say that every time, I know, but I'm very excited to finally have one of our good friends in the hobby, another Josh. Some of you may know him by the name DaGreenshiz, but Josh, if anyone hasn't already heard of you or hasn't seen your channel, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and tell them where they can find you. I'll, of course, link your channel down below so everyone can go and find you there. But yeah, thanks so much for coming on the channel, man.
Definitely, man. I appreciate you having me on, Josh. It's been a long time coming. I know we talked about this. Probably original time was at Long Beach when we got together, but appreciate you having me on. Yeah, so name's Josh, DaGreenshiz Collectibles. My last name's Green, where that comes from. It was like an old Xbox gamer tag if you want the backstory about it. Yeah, basically in the YouTube game, I guess, for the last 2 years, big Pokemon collector, Yu-Gi-Oh collector, some World of Warcraft cards. The channel I have is kind of dedicated towards the collecting. I basically wanted to record the come up of my collection. Basically didn't exist before 2 years ago. And it's come a long way, and I thoroughly enjoying cardboard. I played with a lot of cardboard growing up, but but yeah, that's a quick intro to me.
Yeah, this is going to be a fun interview, man. I already know. I totally forgot that your channel really did get started along with a lot of World of Warcraft stuff, which for me, as a big old school World of Warcraft gamer, like I played Vanilla WoW, I played all the way through Burning Crusades and a little bit into like Frozen Throne. And I really, really appreciate WoW. And I didn't realize there was a TCG surrounding it until finding your channel. You were the one who actually got me to realize that that existed. So this is actually going to be a very, very fun interview. So everyone strap in. You're going to be in for a good ride. This holiday season, I think we're going to be doing a couple good interviews, but this is going to be starting off really hot with Greenshiz. So I do want to talk a little bit about Pokemon, though. We won't bore everyone too much with the WoW stuff. We are going to talk more about that, just a little bit.
Oh yeah.
But we are going to dive our toes a little bit into that. But starting off the interview here, I do kind of like to start just by asking the basic questions, the easy ones, the ones that everyone types to ask. But I really need to know, and I think my viewers need to know, but what is it that kind of got you into the Pokemon hobby? Because like everyone has an entry point or like a Genesis story or a origin story or something. But what do you consider yours? I always love to hear kind of what people say about that.
Yeah, like everybody says it, like most people, because there's only two different ways. It's either the video game or the cards, but 99% of the people is video games. For me, it was blue version. Getting that in Christmas one day, it was amazing. I have my original Game Boy, my original blue version. It's amazing, but it doesn't save anymore. I need to update that. But yeah, so getting into the video games, it transpired into cards. Never played the game, collected, and then my parents ended up giving away my cards except for one card. Probably 2002-ish when Yu-Gi-Oh was coming out. Transitioned into Yu-Gi-Oh, played that, went to regional tournaments, national tournaments. That was awesome. Never really collected it, but I had cards for decks. Fast forward to like high school, I got out of that. Big gap from high school was like pretty much 2005. I was out of cards to probably what would you say 2020, right when COVID was starting. I was completely out of cards. Kept up with it. I had some really good friends that stayed in cards, playing Yu-Gi-Oh competitively, Pokemon competitively. So I kept up and knew what was going on, knew they existed. But it was pretty much just before COVID that I sprung back into it. Found a collection on Facebook, and pretty much the rest is history. There was probably like 8 months there of me just buying and selling raw cards. Didn't know what grading was, basically until 2021. And yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, so it's funny because what you said, your story, it mirrors my story, but if you were to replace Yu-Gi-Oh with Magic the Gathering for almost the exact years there, because during high school, we're similar age. During high school, it wasn't cool to play like trading card games or anything. And so I still played. I moonlit playing Magic. I called it playing poker on Friday night. I would play Friday night poker with my friends. And instead it was Friday Night Magic. But the popular kids and the girls I was trying to impress didn't need to know that. And so, I got out of it after high school as well, sort of right around at the end of high school, and then didn't get back into about 2019. So our time frame is very similar. The reason I think that things like Magic and things like Yu-Gi-Oh did really well in that time period, whereas Pokemon sort of dropped off a little bit, was because they both had like a really, really vibrant player base. Like I know that I don't play Yu-Gi-Oh and I don't know much about it. I admittedly played a lot of Magic, and so I avoided Yu-Gi-Oh for the most part because I had my competitive card game. But
Yeah.
like the same thing, Pokemon didn't have a lot of that. You could play it competitively. There were people like Echo Base, our friend Joe. He played a lot of competitive. I even played a little league, Pokemon League, back in the day, before I got into the real game Magic the Gathering. But it's just, I think those games did well over that time because of the player base. But it's interesting though, because you also chose blue, which is the right choice, and I'm happy to hear that. Not a lot of people say that though. I feel like a
Yeah.
lot more people chose red for some reason, just because big old fire lizard is on the front. But
Yeah.
you know,
My parents picked it for me. They picked my
oh,
destiny.
okay, so you don't have much of a choice.
I didn't have the choice. It was Santa. Santa picked it, I should say.
So I was always a really like pragmatic kid. I was always looking for like the Pokemon that were gonna be strongest, and I always thought that Blastoise beat Charizard because of weakness. And
Yeah.
so like I chose Blastoise because I thought it would be everyone else would be choosing Charizard, and was like, yeah, Blastoise beats him, so whatever. So I
Exactly.
thought that was kind of funny. But I don't think I think I'm the only one who thought that way back then. So but yeah, that's interesting to hear that story, because I really like to hear that, because it's very similar to a lot of people I think who are probably listening, who are around our age. I call us Poke Boomers,
Yeah.
because there are decidedly different age ranges of people who have been in this hobby, who are in the hobby. You get people who are in their like 20s who are kind of in the hobby, who are more into that diamond pearl era, that mid-gen kind of thing. And I love that era too, but I admittedly have zero nostalgia towards it. And when I talk about entry points and I think about entry points, I also think about the video game. But I bet you there's some, and I've actually talked to some people on this, on this channel, on this interview before, where they've literally said that their entry point was like the TV show in like Diamond and Pearl era. I'm like, whoa, I didn't even know it was airing at that time or something.
Right. Yep.
It's
It's
pretty
still
cool to
out
hear
there.
that
Yeah.
era, and it makes me very bullish on like Pokemon as in general as an IP for the future, because so many generations have so many different ways that it like interacts with them, and they feel nostalgia towards it. Because
Yeah.
one of the things I've learned as I've grown older, and I'm sure, and this around the holidays sort of comes up a lot, but nostalgia is probably the most addictive of all drugs, and it just gets worse as you get older. Like nostalgia and that longing for it, it only gets worse as you age. And
Yeah.
so it's
Yeah.
interesting. And
And just
collecting is just
it, it's crazy. I was just thinking back while you're talking about kind of like the beginning for me with the cards. And I actually was like, you know how people door knock to buy and sell houses?
mhm.
I was door knocking people to trade Pokemon cards when I was like 8, 9 years old. I went around the block. I was probably too young to be doing it. My parents apparently didn't care, but I was going to other people's houses, knocking on the door, sitting on their porches, trading cards. Um, it was pretty awesome. And also doing like link battles with the Game Boys, and disconnecting the link cable mid trade and duplicating Pokemon. Just I was in the thick of it, man. I loved it. So much nostalgia.
Did you ever have like a publication? Did you have to subscribe to like, so I subscribed to like Scribe, Beckett, I subscribed to Inquest and Wizard and all those like monthly magazine subscriptions to keep up on the prices of cards, so I could, because I was also an avid trader at that time.
Yeah.
But I was always wonder if other kids did that, because I felt like I've only met a couple people who said that they like, oh yeah, I got Wizard, I got Scry, and like to this day, I still buy up those like sealed magazines when I
Oh
see
yeah.
them. I love them, and some of them actually come with like Pokemon packs sealed in them. Some of the best issues, and so I have a couple in my personal. Those are things like in my personal collection that I like to keep too. So like,
That's cool.
yeah.
Yeah, I
So
never owned any of those. But I like when I'd go to like the bookshop or something, I'd beeline straight for there. My parents would be going to do something else, and I'd go look through the Beckett magazines. Charizard's worth $30 now. Holy cow! Like never had one. I don't think I had one in my binder except for my my one childhood card that was in like the screw case for my entire life. So
It's funny. So a lot of people didn't ever pull that Charizard, and for me, I can't remember if I ever pulled it either. So I'm assuming
yeah,
I didn't,
yeah.
because I can't remember the actual moment when I did. But I had one that I traded off of my cousin that I just it was a terrible trade, one-sided trade that I just destroyed her on. She liked Pikachu and I like Charizard, and let's just leave it at that. It was a but and so I had a Charizard, but I don't remember ever pulling it. So I think that's
Yeah.
really a thing that people get really hung up on. And I guess to this day, I still haven't pulled one either. So like, have you? I'm not sure. Have you had a chance to pull one since your childhood? Is that something that you like have a goal of doing, or?
No, I've opened way more Yu-Gi-Oh vintage stuff. Haven't opened like any vintage Pokemon outside of a few packs. And no, it's not really there. I don't have the urge to want to pull a Charizard. It's not there at all. Not opening modern right now unless I start doing it because of this new TCG game on my phone, but see what happens.
Yeah, I feel like the whole Charizard chasing thing, I don't get it either. Like I've always like watched other people kind of do it from the sidelines, I guess, but
Yeah,
it's never really been something that I was chasing. As
yeah.
far as Yu-Gi-Oh vintage, what kind of stuff are you do you like to open? I have a gentleman in my local area who has some like old Yu-Gi-Oh like the theme decks, like the
Starter decks.
basically the starter decks equivalent. And he was like selling them and stuff. And I wonder like what type of vintage that Yu-Gi-Oh collectors open, because I know that a lot of it gets reprinted, a lot of it's like hard to find in certain editions, but like I literally don't know anything about that. So I like, have you? I know one of your recent videos, which if people go hit down below, hit the link below to his channel, you'll see one of the coolest videos I think that he's done recently. I don't even like Yu-Gi-Oh very much, but I loved the video that you did opening up that like hobby box,
Yeah,
basically. Just because I thought it was a really, really like unique experience and unique opening, and I could feel your excitement through the video, which was
it was
cool.
sick. It was
But like,
sick.
what's the top of the mountain for you for like Yu-Gi-Oh to open up if you were to open one thing up, like to
Yeah, I own it, but I don't think I have the stones to open it. It's
Oh,
just
really? Is it kind of like the first edition is base sets?
no,
Basically?
it's the GX era.
Huh.
This is Cybernetic Revolution, but it's like $2,500 a box, which is expensive.
Yeah.
But this is like top of the mountain for me. I don't need to open Legend of Blue Eyes. That's like first edition base for Pokemon. I don't need to open that. I never opened that as a kid, but I played a lot with these cards and that other box, Legacy of Darkness, I opened. Invasion of Chaos, all right around 2003, 2005. All of these boxes were out. So lots of nostalgia. It's way cheaper than Pokemon sets from 2003, 2005. Way cheaper. So it's awesome. I'm
Just wait
loving it.
till people start grading that stuff, man. I think the reason, the people, I always have said that on this channel, one of my things that I talk about is that I think Yu-Gi-Oh is between 3 and 5 years behind Pokemon.
Yeah.
Because when it was like popping off, it kind of came out a little bit after Pokemon, maybe a
Yep.
few years. And I think it really hit its stride a few years afterwards too. So a lot of the people who are going to be maybe buying in that age range are almost 30 or about to hit that 30-year-old range. And that's when I think hobbies tend to typically kind of explode. So I've always sort of speculated, not like personally, I don't have a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh or anything, but I've speculated that like Yu-Gi-Oh is something that I'm going to miss out on just from not having that knowledge base there. But that era that you're talking about is an era that I also have heavy nostalgia towards in the Magic the Gathering game. So it's very much so that age range when we were like late teenagers, you
Yep.
have that nostalgia towards, which it just gets worse, man. It gets so bad. So
Yeah.
I do know that I think is this full time for you, or is it kind of a side thing, the YouTube thing that you
Yeah.
do?
Yeah. So I've been full time in the automotive industry since I was 20 and 11 years, 12, almost 12 years in my same company. And yeah, so YouTube was new to me 2 years ago. Never uploaded a video, but it definitely is a lot of me now. Like I upload at least almost 5 times a week, if you include the live stream I do on Wednesdays. But just love the community. It's awesome. Just being able to talk to other collectors like yourself, getting to meet these people in person like yourself, and yeah, I love the whole concept of it, and just being able to capture everything in video and being able to look back on it, do it all the time.
Well, I see a lot of on your channel, you do a lot of grading too, and you do a lot of buying and selling as well. So like, even if it wasn't full time, you're doing enough buying and selling that it's probably, and I saw you in Long Beach do some vending too. I think you had a booth there.
Yep.
Whereas in Denver, I don't remember you setting up a booth. You did more of the experience that time,
Yep.
which is the opposite what I did. I had a booth in Denver and I had
Yeah.
the experience in Long Beach, which was, I think you do have to have that experience once without it. But yeah, that's why I asked, because I have seen you kind of getting pretty involved. I think you might be one of the biggest black label chasers that I know. You're certainly the only person that I know who owns a black label, like besides like our, the bigger YouTube friend acquaintances that I know, but
Yeah.
more so you're the only person that I would consider myself like friends with that, you own multiple black labels, and I have a feeling you're not done chasing that mountain either.
Yeah, it's more focused towards just Zapdos cards, but the only non-black label Zapdos I have is the Slow King Neo Rev or Neo Gen Japanese, but I would probably consider that the only one I'd ever sell, just because the other three are Zapdos cards. So yeah, I love them. I just love the conditional rarity. I know it's some people love it, some people hate it, but traditionally it sells, right? You see sport cards, everything in a black label usually sells better. Even modern, the Lugias, the Umbreons, it's insane the prices they pull.
Conditional rarity is a thing. Like whether I like it or whether you like it, which clearly you're okay with it because you're one of the buyers for things like black labels. But I'm not a buyer for that type of thing. But I am definitely a chaser and a seller on those types of things as well, though. So like, conditional rarity, the market, I think, is always going to rack their head around it, because the idea of the same card going for $100 versus $3,000 in the case of like, a Charizard black label, like a modern Charizard or something. It's very hard to rack your head around, because everyone just wants to say, oh, well, why don't I just go and get a PSA 10 Charizard, crack it out and send it 20 times and then still make money at the end of the day when it eventually hits it. But at the end of the day, who's going to go and crack it and send it 20 times to do that? Only a madman would do it. And that's why those madmen are the ones who are going to be cashing out on it. So it is a very interesting thing. And it exists other than the black label too. Conditional rarity does exist in PSA, in scarce, rare, hard conditional rarity cards. Like I'm thinking of the first appearance, like Lugia card. There is no first appearance PSA 10 Lugia card that exists. It just doesn't exist. I believe the highest that is like a BGS 9. I believe there's a PSA 9 potentially. I've only seen a BGS 8 though in person. That's the highest I've ever seen. And I just sold a PSA 9 Slow King first appearance for a record sale at about $13.50. And so that is not a PSA 10 card, but there are no PSA 10s that exist. So a PSA 9 made it the highest condition card of that card. And so conditional rarity really does exist. I don't think it makes sense. It doesn't make sense to anyone. Even sometimes the people who are buying the conditional rarity cards in some cases are like, man, this is stupid, but at the same time, I want this damn thing. So,
so yeah, you want to be on the top of the mountain. That's where it is, basically.
Yeah, and if you love a certain card, like if you're a lover of Zapdos, for example, I mean, how many PSA 10 base set Zapdoses are there? A million, probably a million. How many? Not a million, probably a couple hundred. Not relatively speaking. But how many black labels are there? Probably less than 10.
0.
Exactly. There's zero then in that particular card. I knew you would have known, but speculating, there's probably less than 10 black labels of any in particular old card, like a vintage. So like if you really have nostalgia towards that card, and I'm not trying to shill black labels here or anything, but if you love a certain card and you want the best version of that card, and you don't want someone to look at it and be like, hey, but PSA 10s, every PSA 9 can be a PSA 10. You could just slap that big old black label down and say, oh yeah, well here, take this and shut up, shut your mouth. So
Pretty much.
I understand it. I do understand it. I'm not a buyer for it, but I understand it. And so it's kind of fun to actually have someone here to talk to about that and hear the mentality for sure.
Yeah, and just I guess a crazy example I had seen with video games, like there is a WADA 10. Those of you who don't know the grading scale, it's like a 10, 9.8, 9.6, 9.4. Yeah, they make there's 10s. And when it popped up in an auction, it was like a very, very common fresh case Nintendo game. It was an NES game, I think, or it was an N64, one of the two, but it was like a common, you could still get them fresh out of the case. It hit a 10, only like one of probably only 5 10s in the entire pop report, I'm guessing, but it's really low. Sold for thousands. And like the next grade below it is like pocket change compared to that. So it's just like a game that not a lot of people care about. It's like I don't even remember what it was. It was like a stupid game, but it was just.
It wasn't Super Mario Bros. Or wasn't Super Smash Brothers or something. Yeah.
Mickey rings a bell. So it was Mickey, but I think it was like on a pirate ship or something.
Whoa,
not a popular game.
If it was Disney here, we're talking big bucks, stonks here. You've seen the kind of situation we're working with, right?
It's like $100 sealed, but yeah, it's.
I think Mickey's $1,000 right now. The Lorcana D10.
Lorcana, yeah.
PSA 10. I think it's like $1,000 as of just to date this video based on
come down then, eh?
Or I know I think it might still be. It's a little higher because when I last looked, it was around the same price of Moonbrown, and Moonbrown was closer to that 1,400 range. So I think it is probably a little higher, unless it's come down too. But
last thing on the conditional rarity, it's ever so prevalent. Like even Gemman Pokemon just completed his set of his base of his set cards. All those cards are like conditional rarity, like the last ones he needed, like the Ampharos he needed. It's pop 2 now, I think.
I think it's 2, yeah. It's 2 or 3. And yeah.
So that is like ultimately a very conditional rarity card because there's bajillions of them. So paid the premium because not a lot of them exist. So it's there. People spend the money.
It adds an element of fun to it as well. Only in my reckoning, because like, okay, here's the thing, like a set that you may or may not have cared about before because it maybe didn't have Pokemon. And for me, it would be a set like Ruby and Sapphire in Pokemon, EX Ruby and Sapphire. Yeah. A set like that, I don't have a lot of connection to. I didn't open it when I was a child, when I was younger, so I have no real nostalgia towards it. I didn't play a lot of that era of game. I sort of got out of Pokemon at that time, so I don't know a lot of the actual cards that are going to be Pokemon that are on the card. There's a really good Mewtwo. There's a really good Scyther card. I mean, there's the EX cards that are in it. Sure, those are cool, but aside from those two things, which are like Gen 1, where my real nostalgia is, I don't have a lot in Ruby and Sapphire. But I still, because I know, maybe that's because I'm a nerd, because I know about conditional rarity, I know a lot of those cards are low population. I know the reverse hollows are hard to hit 10s in. I also know that just, even if it's not hard to get a 10, people just weren't sending reverse hollows in any such capacity until just recently in the boom, when it made it worth it to actually get 10s in those. And because of that, there's some sort of conditional rarity that was added to that era that nobody cared about. So it adds a layer of fun that someone like me, who would never consider opening like Ruby and Sapphire, like if I just got back in the hobby, I would look straight to like Team Rocket. Team Rocket would be like the first set that I'd probably just young old card shop, going back into the 2019, coming back. He pulled his Hidden Fates 10 from the local Target or Walmart. He pulled a baby shiny Ralts and Brick card, and he wanted to go on Mercari and go and buy a booster pack to relive his childhood because Hidden Fates didn't do it for him. He's going to go for the Team Rocket pack probably. So that's what I would typically reach for without knowing anything, just going right back in. But now I would argue that being a little more cultured, a little bit more into the hobby, I wouldn't go and spend my $200 on a Team Rocket booster pack, like an unlimited Team Rocket booster. No way. No
Yeah.
way in hell am I going to do that. That's like the last thing that I want to do. But $200, that could get me a pack of like EX Ruby and Sapphire. And I'm actually far more interested, and I would be more like, I would have more enjoyment, more fun opening a booster pack of that, which I have no nostalgia towards, because of conditional rarity, knowing that even if I don't care about the Pokemon in there, I might be able to grade it. It might be low pop, and it'll probably be a better chance at getting my value back than, say, a WotC pack that like everyone and their mother has and open that's just no conditional rarity whatsoever. So it really does, it can add enjoyment to more than just the monetarily, because even though that does have some sort of like my dirty flipperness has kind of bled into that enjoyment a little bit, it adds enjoyment, and it's still a level of enjoyment out of conditional rarity. So I mean, it's a time and a place for it, and I think that's what I love about this hobby, this Pokemon hobby, is that like I mean you aren't full-time, you said, but you're still very, very engaged. I don't think you're really a big flipper per se, though you do sell occasionally, right? You have to, I'm sure, to fund your collection, right?
Definitely.
But it's like you can enjoy it in so many different ways. So it's just a really, really it's a great time to be a Pokemon collector for sure, in whatever capacity it is, because we haven't even talked about Moonbreon yet. Like we already said it. It's been like 20 minutes or something. We finally said the words. And it's like, yeah. We haven't talked about modern, nothing like that. We're just talking about the love of old school Pokemon here.
Damn right.
But speaking of Pokemon, and just collecting in general, do you collect anything other than like Yu-Gi-Oh? Any other weird things? Because like there are people who collect like, shout out Joe, Transformers, people collect some interesting things. Does the DaGreenshiz collect anything weird? Like you have a My Little Pony collection in the back or something?
Human teeth.
Oh, cool.
No,
Nice.
I'm joking.
Yeah. All right, we're gonna cut that, and we're gonna cut out that part real quickly.
No,
I see you got a nice video game collection back there, though. Is there anything in particular you like from video games, or is this those are kind of things that you liked from your childhood?
yeah, so all these games behind me are basically childhood games. So video games is up there as things I like to collect. Definitely. So basically all these were, like I said, childhood games that I grew up with: Devil May Cry, Super Mario Bros. 3, Ice Hockey, NES, and Halo and GTA. So into all of the grading video games, but I'm not no flipping at all. It's basically just picking up stuff that I want to add to the collection. So like you said, just collecting. But besides Pokemon, that Yu-Gi-Oh, some of the World of Warcraft stuff, I started the grading scene for some of World of Warcraft, or at least the base set. Been grading a lot of that, haven't sold a single thing. Probably should have, because there was a Leroy Jenkins that sold for like $900 that I should have been the first one to do that, but I hodled everything. So
where'd that sell for? Was it on eBay or Heritage, or
it was eBay? Yeah.
Interesting. I wonder what something like that would do on Heritage.
I don't know. I'm not sure. It'd be really interesting because there's a lot of World of Warcraft and Hearthstone and tons of collectors out there for it. So it'd be.
Yeah, and the people who are collecting Pokemon likely have a crossover, or at least know what that is. And I feel like things like that are IPs that are really like popular but unknown to people that go next to Pokemon lots and things like Heritage and Golden and stuff, they have a chance to do really, really well. Like I don't know if people don't buy those or if they get paid for it, but I always see some really high sales on certain things in certain times. I guess it's very conditional, but
Yep. Yeah. I did throw one into a Whatnot, like I consigned something through Whatnot. A bunch of Pokemon. I was like, I'll just throw into like a really, really low grade Leroy in there as like a meme. And that's basically what it was. It went for like $20 or something, but it went for $20. It was
that's something. There's sports cards that can't get $1. So you know what I mean?
Yep.
I mean, I don't typically run auctions, but I ran some of my first auctions in a while on eBay on this Black Friday weekend, because I wanted to see how, like, when people are out spending a lot of money and buying, like how auctions did. And
Yeah.
I was quite surprised. I was thinking that some of the slabs that I put up, I wouldn't even get $10. The floor was like $18 to $20 on most of the slabs that I put up. And some hit up numbers that I would have just wouldn't have dreamed of, not even
Yeah.
whatnot dreamers like, fantasy wet dream or something. So
Hell
it
yeah.
was very interesting to see the market for things that are like, I'm talking like PSA 7s, PSA 8s of like random just man like Weasel, like we're talking Luxray. And I'm not trying to down anyone who loves Weasel. If you're the buyer for the PSA 8 Weasel who just paid $38 for that hollow plus shipping to get that from me in my auction, thank you. Thank you. But I'm not trying to yuck your yum. I'm just saying I was expecting $10 or under for that card. That's all. And so, it's one of those things that Pokemon has a depth like we've been talking about, and it's going to prevent some people like myself, the dirty flippers, from taking a big bath. I think it'll also prevent some people like yourself, the diamond hands hodlers, from taking as big of a bath on certain cards because there are people who will swoop in and buy at those, like, I don't want to say floor prices, but they'll say, oh, well, if it gets to X, Y, or Z, I'll just buy all of them. Or I hear that comment or that sentiment in so many ways, and the floor is so much lower or higher, I should say, that it's just crazy. Like the most graded card of all time is still selling for $30. The Charizard from the Champions Path still.
How many were graded?
I don't know the exact number, but it has surpassed all the CD promos. It surpassed the base set Charizard. It has surpassed all other Pokemon TCG cards. It is the most Pokemon graded card of all time for Pokemon.
Something like 30,000 rings a bell or something crazy like that, right?
The number is always bigger every time I look at it. Like I feel like that number would stop growing eventually, but oh no. That number is not done yet. That number is still going. And shout out right now. I was watching a case of Champions Path ETBs being I was just watching it to see what the auction goes for. Those bad boys are still over $800 for a case of them, which is $80+ an ETB, which for a set that you have literally chance of pulling pretty much nothing, basically.
That's you still pretty hard.
Yeah, but you got that Charizard in them. So that Charizard is keeping it afloat, apparently. So
I got a question for you. How many cards do you think are graded out of this set?
So out of a set like that, you said from 2004 or 2005. We're not talking like beginning era Yu-Gi-Oh! Just based on the deduction that I am making from what I know about Pokemon of that era, I bet you there are less than 10 in the population of each like ultra rare or hollow or like hit in those that set for PSA.
Yeah, there's 1,700 total cards graded for the entire set.
And in the hollows, probably in tens, I bet most of them just have single digits.
Yeah, a couple of the big ones have like 20s and 30s. The two big are like 20 and 30.
And so when Yu-Gi-Oh starts popping off, you're going to be you're going to be waiting to strike to open that. You're going to be making a YouTube video, I guess, huh? Because I know now, from what I've seen, what do you think? Would you ever open it beforehand and just kind of speculate? Or are you the type that would wait and then maybe think about it once it makes it right? The time.
Just like the other box I opened, it was an L for sure opening it. It was more just doing it for nostalgia. So I'll probably I have two. I'll open one maybe in the next year or so. We'll see. I just gotta maybe drinking off alcohol. I don't know. I don't know what the reasoning would be behind it. I wouldn't be selling it at all. So it'd just be a loss. So I just gotta swallow that pill eventually.
I guess the question really comes down to is whether you're a sealed collector or more of a slab collector, and what gives you more joy. Do you find yourself, I see you dealing with more slabs, but you have a lot of sealed that you've shown just in this stream too. So what do you feel more attached?
Definitely opened cards in my hand, in a binder, in a slab. I like seeing the cards. I don't have the nostalgia for the boxes because I didn't really open the boxes. I think I opened one booster box my entire life, and it was like Magician's Force, a Yu-Gi-Oh set. It was a Christmas present from Santa. Santa's a G, man. My Pokemon game, the Magic or Magician's Force set, and Yeah, so I have a problem with when I have sealed vintage Yu-Gi-Oh! It finds itself opened eventually just for that nostalgia kick. I don't have like any Pokemon vintage sealed. Um, the oldest thing I have is a uh not Evolving Skies, the 2016 set, XY Evolutions. I got one of those left.
And
So
is that more for the memes, or do you enjoy like the base set reprint aspect? When did you pick that up, if you don't mind me asking? Like at what place? I always feel like the evolutions story is going to be a great case study for like just a set, and everyone's going to be talking about that set forever because of what happened with it. But where in the journey of evolutions did you pick up that box, if you don't mind me asking?
it's a good story. I COVID March 2020 is when COVID started, and me and my wife were going to go on a trip for her 30th birthday to Vegas. The week we were supposed to go to Vegas, we get email saying the entire strip is shut down. We're refunding your plane tickets. And so I still have never been to Vegas. So that canceled that trip. So basically got $1,000 back in my pocket. And I told her, I was like, we're not going on any vacations anytime soon based on what's happening. So I told her, I was like, how about I just go and put this $1,000 into 10 boxes of XY Evolutions?
Woo,
So,
baby. Yes, I like where this is going.
so I
I
was like,
love this already.
we'll go on a better vacation next year. I think this is going to go up because I've been watching Pokerev, and
Ooh, baby.
he
It's
was
already. This
he
is
was shilling the crap out of this
yes,
set. So I was
he
like,
was.
I,
When it was $90, my fiance and I were also watching Pokerev, and
yep,
he was shilling the hell out of it. He
every
was
video.
running those. You remember those weekly eBay things where he would like do the
Oh,
live
I
streams?
loved it. That was
I
my
did
favorite
too.
content.
The number one thing he would always, people would ask him constantly, "Oh, what should I buy with my money?" He would always say
Yeah,
evolution
every time, every time.
every freaking time. It's not even like it wasn't like he didn't. He probably had a million boxes, but he wasn't
Yeah,
saying it because it was he had a million boxes. He was just saying it because he knew. He knew, and he was giving the people the knowledge. I will give Nick. I will give PokeRev that because he freaking was calling it. He was
yep,
telling the people, everyone, every
yep,
week. So
yep.
okay, so you
So
said let's roll this $1,000 vacation into $1,000 evolution, which hats off to you, man. That's pretty baller right there. Like
yeah,
like I like where your head's at, and I love where this story is going. So please
yep.
continue.
So bought them off TCG Player. Just bought 10 boxes off TCG Player. One came in a sealed case, and then I got 4 raw ones.
Oh my gosh, you had a sealed case. That's great.
Yep. So I had that, and just right after I bought it, just literally almost right after, it was probably one. I bought it at 105 or 108 per box. Probably 2 weeks after that, it was probably 120, and then every week, I started checking the price like a 401k. I text my wife, hey, it's up to 140. Hey, it's up to 180. She's like, sweet, this is gonna be an awesome vacation next year. And then come next year for the vacation, and it was at 450, almost 500 a box. So I was like, we're gonna go on a nice vacation, and I sold $3,000 worth, which is 6 boxes, I think. Sold 6 boxes at that time, and we went on a 3x vacation. Essentially, got a beautiful place down in Florida for 7 nights. It was amazing. So,
I love to hear it.
yeah,
Love to hear it.
yep,
Man, that makes me feel good about that. That is fantastic.
yeah. And the other 4 boxes, I gave one away when I had like 50 subscribers to one person. It was $750 box at the time.
Woo,
I
that's a giveaway. Everyone go subscribe to DaGreenshiz. He's bigger now, but he gives away some hot stuff. All right, make sure you
sometimes
sub.
I kept the one. I sold one box a couple months ago to a good friend in California. It was $600. I think that's still a decent price. I think I hooked him up a little bit.
Yeah, 600 is very fair. That's you could still like if you bought a box at 600, you could do a break on whatnot, and even after the 10% fees, still do pretty well.
Yeah, and I forget what the last one I went, but yeah, it was awesome. That was that was one of the coolest plays I've done on sealed products, and thanks PokeRev to that. It was awesome.
Oh man, that sounded like a freaking great roller coaster. That was like one of
Yep.
the smoothest roller coaster rides you could ask for. Because
Yep.
the thing with evolutions was like when it hit 300. So it went, I feel like it jumped from 120 to 300 immediately. I think that was what happened with the Logan Paul thing. It went from 100 to 300 almost immediately. And that was the thing where it was like, whoa, because that was when I bought this box right here. It
Okay.
was in the beginning of 2020, right as the boom was starting to happen, the pandemic happened. This box was $3,000+ when I first got that box, and I felt like that was a really risky decision. That box is now hovering a little bit over 10 grand, and it hasn't come down. But it happened the exact same day as Evolutions. Is when that hit 300 is when I bought that box. And since then, Evolutions, I remember the conversation I had with my best friend who went with me when we bought the box. We were talking about it. He didn't know anything about Pokemon. He kept calling Evolutions base set 3. And so I kept on being like, oh, this guy, Logan Paul, just, opened this box on YouTube.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, whatever, whatever. He's like, so what's the deal with this like Evolutions base set 3 set? And I was like, oh, it's at $300 right now because it's basically cheaper base set, and now base set's exploding. And he goes, so are we buying it at $300? And I said, dude, you're smoking dust. I didn't say that time because that's a newer, Pokemon terminology. Shout out Spicy Boys. I said, boy, you smoking dust if you think that Evolution booster box is $300 is gonna hold. That thing was $90 2 weeks ago. I said, so don't you get too excited. Let's go buy that magic box and call it a day. Flash forward to today, Pokemon market, as far as I can tell, has crashed and burned and done whatever it was going to do. The bad stuff has happened. Now we're just chilling and it's doing whatever it's going to do. It's normal stuff. And it's still $600, $700 a box. I see options in. So Evolutions is going to be something that we will love to talk about. What was it before? Was it Roaring Skies? Is that the Evolutions of its time?
Yeah. So I don't even know. Never really opened it.
So I
Never.
didn't open it either, but what I've heard of about was like XY generation, that 2016 Pokemon Go came out, right? Did you play Pokemon Go when it came out? Were you into
Yeah.
that?
Level 25 right now, I think. Kind
What
of
team
just
were you?
tape
Mystic, Instinct, or Valor? Red, blue, or yellow?
Zapdos.
Okay, yellow. That's cool. We can be friends. We can, as long as you didn't say Valor. Anyone in the comments, if you're Valor, we can still be friends, but
Get
you're
that
on thin
out.
ice. You're on thin ice. But no, we were Team Mystic. I was a blue team. But I thought that when the game came out, you had to choose the team based on what bird you were going to be like given or something. And so even though I loved Zapdos, he was the one that I remember as a childhood like bonding with the most because you run into him first and he's like I just feel like the power plant was such a cool like
Oh, yeah.
area. It was like an extra area, it felt like, but it was such an integral. But I don't know, it was such a cool area. So I really like Zapdos too, so I can see why you like it. But Articuno, there's something about Articuno that I always really like love, the elegance of Articuno. So that's why I chose blue, I guess. But yeah, it's Pokemon Go came out in 2016, and that caused a spike in all things Pokemon once again because the resurgence of Pokemon just kind of took the world by storm, and that's when I think Evolutions was really booming, and
Yeah.
it boomed as well as like the Roaring Skies was like $300 a box, and that was a modern box. Think of it like Evolving Skies being a big deal, almost $300 a box now. Same thing, but within a different era, 2016, but for a different reason. It was for playability, and Shaman EX was a huge playable card of the era.
Yep.
Every deck needed it. There weren't promos or whatever at the time, so you couldn't get it. So like, and then a reprint happened, and so like the reprint really demolished it because it was a huge reprint. People lost faith, and it was a whole thing. So Evolutions is very similar, I feel like, except when no said reprint ever happened for it, and it never crashed, and people didn't never lose faith in it. It's just become a meme. So
100%. I love it.
it's
Fun
funny.
stuff.
The big brains in the hobby all kind of called it, but at the same time, the big brains in the hobby, I feel like all at the same time didn't really call it. Like they did and they didn't. Like I feel like most people sold way too early for Evolutions, and it kept getting sold all the way up and creating these new like price floors in people's minds,
Yep.
even if there isn't a price floor for it. The person who sold, who had their case of evolutions for 6 years, 5 years, and it didn't move, and they finally sold 10 boxes for $108 to you, the DaGreenshiz, when they're buying their first purchase, they were probably ecstatic. They're like, holy crap, dude. These boxes just moved 10 of them. They weren't moving for ages.
I know.
And so that person was happy to get rid of them at $100. And then when you sold them at $400 to go on your vacation, you're like, dude, this is great. You were ecstatic to get rid of them at $450, right? And so you just got rid of it. And the person who bought them, they're probably they were ecstatic to buy them at $450 at that time too, because it's $600 now. And so they're not going to get rid of it for less than like $450 at that point. So it creates these weird like price floors in some regards. It gets bought and sold up the ladder rather than a really like organic growth where it spikes because of something like a card that's playable, then gets smashed with a reprint, because it had nothing to do with reprints. It was all a matter of just the market deciding its new, levels that it was okay with, basically.
Yeah, that's exactly how I see vintage like PSA 10 cards. They basically just the new sale, just slowly trickle up or trickle down. Yeah, just like that.
I find it interesting that PSA 10 WotC is suffering a little bit right now while modern is sort of in its little like era. And I wonder if those two things, even though I know a lot of this like modern versus vintage thing, it's very like tongue-in-cheek. We do it for content. We kind of bat our heads at it all day long and bang our heads against the wall, and we don't get anywhere. But I really do feel like maybe they're more linked than people like to believe, because I always feel like people say, oh yeah, they're not linked. Vintage and modern, they're doing different things. They both are their own crazy market, but they're different. They're not linked. But like, I almost feel like somewhat the modern market is detracting from the vintage market, because people kind of are like, yeah, been there, done that, seen that. This new stuff is just crazy. And so, seriously, I don't know. So what do you think about that whole like modern vintage thing? Not to like start the modern versus vintage like debate on this like podcast, but just interested in your thoughts on that.
I think they're more not related. I think it's just more supply and demand, like straight up, like because the demand for a PSA 10 Shadowless Zapdos, there's probably 5 people out there that are looking for that exact card now, versus the PSA 10 Moonbryon. There's 250,000 people looking for that card, and there's only, I guess you could say, only 3,000 ish copies of that card in a PSA 10, but you have hundreds of thousands of people that want it. So they all know that card exists. A lot of the people maybe don't know about vintage cards, and it's just niche. It's one of those niche things, so it doesn't see the growth until you get a crazy event where all the publications are reporting on it. Base set boxes opened, $10,000 a pack. Again, it goes on auction, $30,000 a pack. Like if it's hitting headlines, demand goes up, and then the price went up. So because then people were knowing about what was happening, what exists, and obviously those people didn't forget, but just the need and want for some of those vintage cards isn't there. But the modern stuff is cheaper. I guess the Moonbryon's more expensive than a lot of vintage 10s, but it's yeah, I think it's just hundreds of thousands of people chasing modern, and good on you. It's here to stay. Modern is not going anywhere. It's a force.
These 3 cards. This card, it's a population 20 something. It's a Wigglytuff EX PSA 10.
Is that a card you own that's not a 1? Come on.
Yeah, I know. I'm breaking the habit. PSA 10 Sableye from Crystal Guardians.
On reverse. Yep.
No, not the reverse. It's just a regular holo. That's like a population 30 something. Yeah. And then this card. This is a population 40 something. It's the English Rosalia holo from EX Dragons, right? Those 3 cards you could have for the price of a Moonbryon. You could either have these 3 cards, which are they're not a Moonbryon, I'll give you. None of those are Umbreons. None of them are Moonbryons. None of them are like alternate art crazy, but they're all really beautiful cards. You can have all 3 of those, or you can have one Moonbryon. And like, I know there's gonna be people like on both sides. Like so like you could either have this or you could have this. And there's gonna be people on either sides of the argument. Like they're gonna say this artwork, the Moonbryon artwork, is so objectively good and it's so hard to pull. It's so like scarce to pull, even with so many copies of it out there. The demand and the artwork so good and blah 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 blah. That's what will demand that why the price is so high. Good.
Yeah,
I hear that. I just auctioned 2 of them off. So
I
totally
know.
understand. I get it. I love it. I'm here for it. Y'all want to see Moonbryon? I'll show you
A lot
some.
easier to grade modern too, so I'm loving it too.
Yeah, because like theoretically, you can buy a raw Moonbryon and go grade it and make it a 10. And I guarantee you, I cannot go and buy raw copies of any one of these cards and
Yeah,
just grade it. Just like get a 10 80% of the time. You can't do it. I couldn't do that 20 times and do that. So like the level of like you know what I'm saying. You know what I'm saying. So I understand, and I'm not a buyer for either of those things. Like I'm more of a seller for sure. Like my interaction with the hobby isn't to like hold things. Like I'm a sealed collector. I do like sealed. Like if I have to compare, like the question I asked you about sealed versus slabs or raw, I'm definitely more of a sealed collector. And it's funny because like to me, the stuff that I really love, like in those sealed boxes, I know that set backwards and forwards. I know every single card in that set. So
yep,
to me, to enjoy the set, I don't need to have the card itself. And I know that it's outside of my price range to have a PSA 10 of all of them or whatever. So like at the same time, I also know opening that booster box, it's a world of pain and disappointment. But the minute that I don't, but as long as I don't open it, theoretically, I have every single card in my head in mint condition, in potential 10 quality, in that one sealed product. So I don't need to own all the other things. And like, and I'm not going to go buy something, a sealed product that I don't know backwards and forwards, that I don't have that connection with and hold it either. So like my mentality is a little different with like what I hold, I think. So like I don't have a lot of PSA stuff. If I do, it's a PSA 1 basically. Um,
yep.
so all my 10s are for sale, but my 1s are for like personal collection because I love the art and I just don't care about the value and I just want to have it to see it. And it's a lot of stuff I didn't have as a child, like gold stars. I never connected with the gold stars, but
Yeah,
my PSA 1 collection is all gold stars for the most part and other like crystal and shining. And I wasn't here for any of that stuff, you know.
yep.
And so I always refer to that as like a reverse nostalgia. Oh, by the way, speaking of, you know, going in nostalgia, I appreciate you recording the Sandstorm
Oh
booster
yeah,
pack that we opened in Long Beach.
hell yeah.
We haven't had it, we haven't posted it because we wanted to wait until the grade or whatever came back. But now that we since got grades, I need to make a TikTok or something posting it. But Josh was actually in Long Beach with us, and we opened up a booster pack after having some drinks and beverages after a long collecticon day with the homies, all of the friends and all the Poke fam. And I ended up pulling a hollow Soul Rock and a reverse hollow Umbreon. We graded both of them, the Soul Rock 10 and the Umbreon 9, which I was surprised because like I handed the cards to DNA to
Yeah.
sleeve, which was a bad idea. Looking back on it now, realizing, shout out to you, DNA, love you, love you. But we were all drinking, right? So if anything were to happen to those cards, I would have in my head thought, oh, I blame DNA for this.
Yep.
So luckily for us, it got a 10, and I'm not gonna have to send my lawyers after him. So it's all good. We're keeping the lawyers on retention, you know, on retainer. So they're being held back by we're holding them back by the leash.
Hell yeah,
But
man. That was awesome. No, that was my first experience in a group setting because I had gone to other collect cons. That was my third collect con I've been to. But I had not got the experience of somebody opening a vintage pack kind of there in front of me. So that was really cool. It was really cool to see. And that was a pleasure to record it for you. Hopefully the quality is good enough for TikTok and YouTube shorts or whatever.
oh yeah. You don't have to have very high quality for TikTok or YouTube shorts. Trust me, they'll handle just about anything. You'll get about 1,000 views or so. it amazes me, like the TikTok views compared to like YouTube or Instagram, like just looking at the amount of eyes. I don't know what it's doing. Maybe there's just more people on the app and viewing it on a regular basis,
Yes.
but it just gets more views, whatever it is. Like I don't know. I don't know why. I don't make good TikToks. I don't make fancy ones, but the ones that I make are all getting more views than my YouTube stuff is. So it's pretty crazy.
Yeah. I just watched the live stream. It was PK and Rattle and minus Cool Train Ryan because he was watching soccer. And but Rhyme Style was on there. He was talking about TikTok and he's got, I don't know, 100 million something views, 100 million views, and he's made $420 in the app.
Yeah, it doesn't pay out as much as YouTube, that's for sure.
So yeah, TikTok is where I started actually before YouTube. I was doing some of my collection on TikTok, and it's insane the number of views you can get. I posted a video, the most views I've ever seen. It was like a 8-second clip of a bathroom floor with Pokemon acrylic. It was like acrylic into the floor. It was like 1.4 million views I got on TikTok, and it was insane. Like it's just the stupidest stuff you can do, and just hits the algorithm.
Yeah, that A word, the algorithm.
Yeah.
That's a word that I never thought I would hear myself saying as many times as I do now, but being like a professional YouTuber at this point, shout out to the ads on the channel. Shout out Shadow Raid Legends. We just got monetized recently, so shout out, the land, the lords and
Oh
land
no, not that one.
Just kidding. That's not gonna be.
Jesus.
I don't think you're allowed to do that anymore. That's been like outed. So instead, we're gonna be naming stars. We're gonna be naming rocks after people, and all those types of great things that you're gonna be seeing on the channel. Um, no, but it's crazy because algorithm is something that rules our lives, and it will probably rule our lives for the foreseeable future. And I don't know how I feel about that. Like some days I like it, and some days I'm like way too okay with it. And other days I'm like way too not okay with it to the point where it's detrimental, where I'm like, going into private mode on all my browsers. I'm like unlinking all of my stuff. I'm like, no, I don't want any of this stuff to have my info. I'm like not allowing Instagram into my photos or anything. So I'm like personally uploading each one. And other days I'm just like, you know what? This is going to make my life so much easier. Honestly, I want the algorithm to literally do everything for me. I wish the algorithm could brush my hair. And then it's like those days I'm just like, all right, link it all. I'll go. It's like full send, baby. So, I mean, it's a funny situation that we find ourselves in, but it was just right before COVID that I don't think I ever heard that word before.
Yeah. I think I've heard it from Graham Stephan, who I've been watching on YouTube for a long time. He says it in every freaking video because he's like, that's his wife. Like the algorithm, he beds that person. Like like that is poor guy, man. It's definitely some psych thing that is not it's undiagnosed, and it's a problem. But God love him.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of stuff about these recent ads and Raid Shadow not Raid Shadow Legends, but all these YouTubers and sponsorships and stuff. And I'll be steering clear of all that stuff. But yeah, I appreciate everyone who just speaking of that, who have liked and followed along the way here. It's been quite a journey. I think we're gonna try to next goal. We're gonna make a big video where we do like a giveaway video. We're gonna do like a costume and a big thing. You'll enjoy that, Josh. But then
Oh yeah.
what's a big goal for you for the channel? Speaking of which, because I think you just recently surpassed 2,000, or you're just about there, right? Because I feel
1,000, just hit 1,000 or whatever a couple months ago. Yeah, no, it's for the channel. I don't know. It's not going to ever be something like I based my channel around a car guy on YouTube.
I never knew that. That's crazy. Like, as in like the way that you do your channel, or like what your inspiration for it?
Both. Yeah. So there's this guy named TJ Hunt on YouTube, and he collects cars and he fixes cars and flips his cars. So he's worked from small, crappy cars to now he's buying and selling some Lamborghinis and stuff like that. And he vlogs, talks about what he's doing, things that are getting fixed. Like I'm not fixing things, but I'm cracking slabs. I'm talking about that. So it's kind of that. I like doing the vlogs when I go to Collecticon. It's I don't know. I think there's a chance for something to ever come out of it. It's all about consistency. If you want to do it, everyone says that you got to be consistent with what you're uploading. Um, yeah, I don't know. I don't have no goals now. Maybe in 16 years, I'm gonna keep grinding for a while. Just collecting. I don't see that going anywhere. But when my kids are out of high school, I might be doing this more full time. We'll see. Which is like I said, 16ish years from now. We'll see what happens, man. I'm in for the journey. It's gonna be a long ride.
I mean, I certainly hope you are, because I feel like there's a lot of Zapdoses that need black labels, and there's only one guy I can think of that's crazy enough to get all of them. So
Hoping no more get graded soon.
only by you, maybe. So do you grade with BGS ever?
I've only sent to BGS through middleman and probably 10 cards in my life.
It makes you want to kill yourself when you submit to BGS, because I made my first submission, and I will tell you, even with the new submission method, I was close to jumping.
Yeah, it's pretty insane. I haven't used the new method, like I haven't submitted, but I might be submitting a Shadowless Zapdos here soon to maybe get a BGS gold label 10. Yeah, I don't know, man. It's a gamble I don't want to do, because I got burned. I sent a bunch of vintage Japanese cards. Every single one came back at 9.5, basically 0.5 off of a 10. Every single one of them. They're like 9.5 plus pluses or whatever they call them. So
where does one get a vintage shadowless hollow Zapdos to send to BGS these days?
It's currently in a PSA 10.
Oh, you're thinking about cracking it, a PSA 10?
Yeah, I got 2 of them right now, so I might be sending one. I don't know. We'll see. It's pretty clean.
PSA 10 shadowless Zapdos run for these days? Like, I guess the numbers are probably all over the place, but
the last time I sold one, it was like $2,700. That was at post boom. So yeah, they're expensive.
If you crack that card, you have literally.
Yeah, I don't know. I gotta expect it very good.
Thing I've ever heard anyone. If you do that, I don't think, I'm just gonna say, I don't think you should do it on YouTube, because whenever people do things live on YouTube, it messes up. You just need to do it in a great situation. If you want to record it, but don't let yourself know you're recording it, if you know what I mean, because you want to make sure you're calm and collected, and because that PSA 10, people crack those. People actually crack those.
There's been people sending PSA 10 slabs to like CGC, upgrading to pristine, or not upgrading, kind of sidestepping into a pristine 10.
So those go for higher than some PSA 10s do. I've watched auctions very closely on certain. It's weird because certain cards do and certain cards don't. It's really weird to see what do and what don't. I think it translates to like the types of collections and the types of buyers that they are.
Yeah, BGS, you can't min grade, I think, above a 9.5, right? So basically you do have to full send it. Like it's get cracked. That's the option. So,
so you can't min grade above 9.5. You can't say min grade 10.
I don't think so. Not anymore at BGS.
Ooh, so you really gotta have some cojones.
Yeah. So I've been going back and forth on. I haven't.
It's you still gotta have some Pokeballs if you want to do something like that.
I've cracked a lot of first edition Charizard, so it's in the realm. But this would be this is a high risk. Those were not really high risk.
Tell the chat, or tell the comment section, or whoever is listening to this podcast, a little bit of your story, because what you just mentioned is something that I think a lot of people, you just kind of went over quickly, but Josh has done something that a lot of people would probably start sweating just thinking about. But he has bought a graded base set first edition Charizard. And what did you do with that first edition Charizard? What's the story behind this situation? Because most people haven't ever even owned a first edition Charizard base set, much less like cracked one.
Yeah, so I started smaller. I look back, it was like August of 21. I started cracking some PSA slabs to upgrade to CGC. and I started with like Shadowless Blastoise and a Shadowless Charizard, a little bit lower end. And then basically realized that CGC is a lot more generous when it comes to dents or surface scratches, stuff like that. So I could get like a PSA 6 card that has like a binder ding, clean, no whitening or very limited whitening. I could crack it, send it to CGC, and upgrade a couple of grades on average most of the time. So the most recent one was I got a PSA 6.5, or it was a 6. One of those. I think it was a 6.5, and it upgraded into a CGC 8
of the Charizard, the
of the
basic
first edition
edition
Charizard. Yeah,
the golden goose. The it's not a Moonbryon, but it's the golden goose of Pokemon right now.
yep. Yeah, so that it was good. It was, the other one was like the first one I did was like a PSA 5 or 6, and it went up like 1.5 grades. And so basically made like $1,000 to $2,000 off both of those in like a week's work, essentially, because they got graded fast.
Yeah, and that's really interesting because I feel like just the fact of having one and then to be able to crack it and upgrade it, that's a pretty cool story to be able to tell. And so are you looking to then trade up and maybe upgrade that card back to a PSA like PSA 8 maybe, or PSA 7 or something of that sort? Or where is the journey for that card? Or is this sort of proprietary and this is for the channel, so you have to follow along for this one?
No, so I've given updates on the channel some point. I don't know where, maybe right after CollectCon Denver, but I sold it at CollectCon Denver to a gentleman in person that had seen my videos on YouTube, which was awesome.
Oh, that's super cool. Yeah. I've
Yep.
actually sold a couple cards to someone who's like found me through YouTube, which is it's a really gratifying.
Yep. So it was good. He had seen obviously the inception of the card, what it was, and now it is. So I'm not lying to anybody about what the card is.
Transparent, very transparent. Yeah.
Basically just trying to get to a PSA 9 first edition Charizard is kind of there on the list of my first edition PSA 9 set. That's the last one I need.
What's that sitting at? I think last solds are what, like 10 or 11 grand for the 9s? Is that what, or
For
no?
the 9, it's roughly 18 to 25 grand.
Oh, it's a lot more than that. It's much more. Okay, wow.
One just sold the cheapest I've seen on Heritage auctions for 14,000, but the thing was beat up.
Oh, okay. So it was a bad copy, basically. So it's like a 9.
It's something I wouldn't even considered buying because it was bad. It was pretty bad.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's expensive. It's
so are you you're trying to complete all of first edition base set in a 9?
Yeah, that's the last hollow I need.
Really? You have all the other hollows? Wow, that's pretty impressive. I actually haven't seen you show that a lot on your channel. I feel like you haven't done a reveal yet, have you?
I made like one video showing off all of them minus the Charizard, which was a few months ago. But yeah, it was just a one and done. Yeah,
that'll be a cool video when you finally get the Charizard. It's gonna be like a gym situation where you're like, oh.
Yep. Yeah. Exactly. No, it's awesome. Love the set. Love the old school. That's obviously blue versions. Probably might be my most played Pokemon game. Might not be.
So I was a gold, like after I got blue, and then I skipped yellow because I never had yellow. I never had access to it. Everyone says yellow is one of the best Pokemon games. I just never got to play it because, and I probably should play it at this point, but then it was gold. Like Pokemon Gold for Gold and Silver was like the game that I probably played more than anything. So like I do love Johto, but it was because I had that love of the Kanto Pokemon, and Pokemon Gold was like a combination of the two. So it was nice. Speaking of eras, though, it kind of leads really good into our next question here. I guess I don't really know what you're going to say for this, but if you had to say like what your favorite generation or your favorite era is, either in the TCG set or just in or in like the TCG space, or in like in general the Pokemon era, what would you say about that? You can answer both ways too if you have answers for both.
Yeah, it's different for the TCG and for the game. So the game is Gen 3. So I played Sapphire tons. That's the first time I ever got a legit level 100 Pokemon, just attrition going through the Elite Four. There was Kyogre, the dude. He could one shot every Pokemon in the Elite Four because he had Thunderbolt, he had Surf, he had Ice Beam. Like he was untouchable.
Mhm.
So played the piss out of that game. So I have a lot of nostalgia for some of those cards, which is why I really like the Amazing Rare Kyogres.
I'd say that explains the whole Kyogre thing. That really explains it right there.
Yep. So he's not he's top three for me for Pokemon for collecting. I'm not chasing all the Kyogre cards because it's expensive.
Yeah.
As Zapdos is enough of a battle for me.
Yeah. I think Kyogre's got some really expensive cards on there. Yeah.
Yeah, he's got a gold star, which is $3,000-$4,000. So I'm chilling with what I'll stick with the Amazing Rares, which are seeing play in competitive now. Not Kyogre's getting splashed. So stay tuned. I know Raikou and Evital are both getting played now with these new cards. So well, stay tuned on that one. We'll see how the Amazing Rares do. But for the cards, it is definitely base set. That's what I had kind of collecting. I don't remember ever. Like I played the crap out of Sapphire, but I think I was playing Yu-Gi-Oh at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't really collect any of those cards at all. I don't think I had any Gen 3 cards in my life. So that's it. That's just definitely base set for me for cards.
Yeah, that's what I think a lot of people who like they look back at base set, and even though they like other things like the new modern stuff or they like other artworks looking into the hobby, that nostalgia is kind of what always goes back with base set. Because like I always say, like on our podcast, on the Cardboard Hands podcast, I have been known to call base set just clip art, Sugimori art, and I've said disrespect, and I've thrown some pretty big. I've thrown some shade at base set. But what I can't throw any shade at, and I cannot deny, is the fact that it is the nostalgic set for most of us Poke boomers out there. Us like 30-something-year-olds who all kind of got into it with red or blue. Like we have this sort of weird, almost irrational connection to that set, even though it's got the most basic artwork ever. The Glizzy looks like it's straight up with like made in Windows 95, like, coming out of the dirt with dot hack graphics or whatever, but it's so nostalgic to us. And I know that there's a Glizzy collector in this room, so to speak, that will probably speak to that. So
100%.
Oh yeah, by the way, congratulations on your collection goal, completing the binder of Shadowless Glizzies. I am happy that finally is. I'm looking forward to the video. I'm always happy to see a collector who really has a passion for something, and to collect a whole binder of 360 something. How many is it?
360 Shadowless Diglets.
Yeah, to collect that many of any one card is dedication, because you can't just go on TCG Player and buy that many Shadowless. Like, you probably could, but you're going to spend too much on it, and it's not really worth the effort. But congratulations, sir.
Yeah. The next one will probably be Wiglet. Stay tuned for that one.
Oh my gosh, you mad man, you mad lad. Wait until they do an EX of it. Wait until it gets its time to shine. It's gonna get like a baby shiny, or
they haven't done that.
Yeah, they're so do you think the Pokemon's gonna do another Hidden Fates-esque set, or do you think after how badly Shining Fates did that and flopped, that they're kind of like, okay, fine, we won't do another one of those for a while? But
how many were there? Was it 2 or 3? Was it 3 sets with baby shinies?
Well, Shining Legends, if you count them, had a few shinings in it. They were like, we call them baby shinings, but they actually had shining in the title. It was more like the Neo shinings than it was baby shining. Baby shinings are like their own thing that came out with Hidden Fates. At least that's what I would say, because Hidden Fates was a total reprint set. It was all reprinted, and so they were all like baby shinies too, that were like the first time getting shiny treatment, basically, a lot of them.
Yep, and that was all in Sword and Shield, right?
It was all Sword and Shield block, yes. And then the same thing, that was Shining Fates, is Sword and Shield block. Sun and Moon block was the Hidden Fates. And so Shining Legends was also in Sun and Moon block, but it had original cards where it wasn't reprinted. Like, whereas like it introduced new things to the whereas Shining Fates did introduce some new cards like the VMAX Eevee, and there were some individual cards that were only out in Shining Fates that actually impacted the game, but it was a little bit different than Shining Legends was. So like I'm wondering if you think they would make like another like a full on like baby shiny set like they did with like the full art shinies. And
I would say just because they did. I would be curious. I'd be really curious. I'm probably looking up after this in Pokelector what that set number was in that era. Like, did it line up Shining Fates, Hidden Fates? Like, were they both box 10 or something like that? I'd be curious.
that's a good point.
Because maybe they do the next whatever Fates, whatever that is. That'll probably, I could see them like, oh yeah, we could do this again. Why not? It's takes up a whole nother box for them.
They usually take up a holiday set slot, which
Yeah,
is
yeah.
one of the 2 additional slots that we get that come in like ETBs. This year,
Yep.
or this last year, we got Pokemon Go. And then previous to Pokemon Go, we got Celebrations. And then previous Celebrations, it was Shining Fates. And previous to Shining Fates, it was Champion's Path. And previous to Champion's Path, it was Hidden Fates.
Mhm.
And so
Yeah.
it's the next, so it's like 3, right? So that would be like a cycle of 3. So because if it went Hidden Fates, Champion's Path, Shining Fates. Oh no, it's only 1 between Hidden Fates and Champion's Path.
Well, then probably maybe not. I think it might be dead, kind of like Amazing Rares, where they did it set at right after almost. They're lined up. So I could see if it was like I said, if it was both set 10 or something in the given eras, maybe they'll do it again in set 10. But I don't know. They might have kissed it goodbye and moved on to character rares. And
It's funny how quickly people moved on from that set. Didn't you think? I feel like immediately it's like the meme with Andy dropping, the Woody toy and picking up the Buzz Lightyear toy. It's like immediately, it's like, the Andy was dropping the baby shinies for and the Rainbow Rare Chonkachu and everything for the alternate arts immediately when they came out. Like once we got alternate arts, we got our little taste. Like Battle Styles kind of gave us a slight taste. Urshifu was 100 and it was like $200.
yeah,
The Urshifu VMAX, that card that's like $10, $15 now, it was like $200 or $300 when it first came out. Bonkers. And that was because it was the first taste of alternate arts that we were getting since Sun and Moon era gave us sort of those tag teams. And so it's like we just forgot about baby shinies and we just collectively decided we didn't care about them at all and decided we moved on to something else. So I thought that was a really interesting sort of like, trajectory for that.
yeah. It's like it had the Sleepy Tyranitar too in Battle Styles, and yeah, it's just
It
whatever's
wasn't the
modern.
most expensive card in the set though by far. Like it was the VMAX Urshifu, like big time for a long way. And it was for a long time it was too. It wasn't just when it came out for like opening weekend either.
Yeah, it's I don't know. It's whoever's got the most eyes, and it's usually the most recent set. It's the demand that's there, and of course there'll be people that kind of are delayed and they're still looking at the older sets and still collecting it, but 90% of the people moved on to the next hottest thing. So
Yeah, as far as modern is concerned, I guess one of my big questions is like, how long is it that this Charizard UPC is going to be just like dead in the water? Because I know a lot of people out there who are watching. I know you and we actually are in a similar boat. Neither you nor I bought into the Charizard UPC for very different reasons, I believe, but the same end result. I ended up getting like 2 or 3 pre-ordered just from like Pokemon. I think I had a case pre-ordered total. And I opened a couple, sent my best ones. I kept a couple for prize support on my channel, and I have 1 left. That's what's behind me back there. So like I really didn't have very many Charizard UPCs.
yeah,
But I'm curious because now, they're going for close to like $85, $90 at this point on the secondary market. I wonder for how long it'll sit there because that is close to distribution price. And that's a pretty good product to sit for distribution price.
yeah, no, and I just made a video kind of talking about it, and there's a guy named Sassy Auto on eBay who's primarily Yu-Gi-Oh. He does Yu-Gi-Oh, but he got a bunch of them, maybe 500, and he sold them all for $69.99 on eBay, which is it's balls cheap. And those things moved faster than you could say, thank you, sir. And yeah, so it's crazy. I can't see him sticking around that low just because you get freaking 16 packs in there, which is crazy. I don't know. It's right now it's a really weird time with Magic the Gathering, what's going on there. Obviously the Charizard UPC, which is way underperforming, but it was also printed to oblivion, it seems. But yeah, I didn't buy a single one. I tried to buy tried to reserve two through Pokemon Center. Site crashed. I was like, F it, I'm done. Didn't try again after that. I opened one at my friend's house because he purchased one, and I'm grading one for him, one of the cards. But yeah, I didn't get any. I don't know. I just didn't want to make the play. It just seemed everybody was in it. I was like, I'm chilling. I'll see how it goes. I'll watch and see everyone's successes. And a lot of people are succeeding, but also a lot of people have gotten burned. So
yeah, it's one of those things. I personally didn't get a single 10. So out of the ones I opened up, I may have gotten a bad grader, but I sent them at $30. I wasn't trying to be first to market. I was trying to be a little bit quicker than everyone else as far as like bulk is submitted. Not a single 10. And I sent only my best copies in. And out of, I think I had 6 copies to actually send when it came down to it. So
wow, yeah.
yeah, all nines. So that was fun. Big L. But it was to be expected, like you just said. I think it's when it's a play that every single person is making, and it's supposed to be the most obvious play. While sometimes the most obvious plays are really the ones that play out the best, oftentimes I feel like the plays that everyone's making are more of the plays that you want to stay away from, because like, if everybody Joe Schmo is doing it, then you're going to have a competition with everyone, including Joe Schmo, when you want to actually go and cash out on it. Whereas if you're the only person making a play, or if you're one of a few people making a play, you have a much easier time finding a buyer, because even though you may have less eyes on it, you have more or less competition, so more chance of making a sale. So it's a similar situation with why I go for PSA 1s rather as well as PSA 10s and other grades of things, because like it's such a niche play that people just kind of like wide their eyes at, and they're like, PSA 1s? Oh, I don't know about that. That seems pretty but it's one of those things that not everyone's doing it, and until everyone's doing it, then it's a bad play. It's a terrible play. But as long as not everyone is doing it, it's actually a really good play.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting dichotomy where it's like you need some things to be very, very like everyone's doing it, and then you need some things to be very against the grain as well.
Yeah, I think the people that aren't pressed to have to sell now, because obviously there's a lot of people that they need to move into the next modern set, right? Like a lot of LGSs, they don't buy and hold like Rudy from Alpha Investments on a lot of things. They buy and have to turn and burn. Right now it's burning. Like it's not a good time to sell, but it likely not financial advice. But if you put this next to Chilling Reign, they're probably similar prices right now.
Mm-hmm.
The one with Charizard on the cover is probably going to go up a little bit faster, and it'll be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, imagine this, like, to the viewer, you're listening, you're like, why are people selling these Charizard UPCs for under retail, for literally $100 to lose? Like, if you're a store, why would you ever do that? So here's this, picture this. You're an LGS. You operate in more than just Pokemon. Say you operate in Magic the Gathering, in Yu-Gi-Oh!, in Dragon Ball Super. When you put together your order forms, you have multiple invoices that you have to pay 30 days out after you actually make the purchase. Most of the time with most distributors, you don't pay all up front. They send you an invoice, you have an agreement, basically a contract that you signed with the distributor. They send you your product, and you have 30 days to essentially pay for it. Yeah. If you don't pay for it, then you got problems, basically. But basically, that whole 30 days, you can do whatever you want with the product. So what happens if you're a small LGS and you have 4 different invoices from Dragon Ball Super, Magic the Gathering, you got Yu-Gi-Oh! Invoices, you got invoices for, Pokemon. All of those are probably four figures, 4 to 5 figures, close to, depending on the size of your LGS. I'm a small pack breaker, and I spend probably close to 4 figures, 4 or 5 figures on a good month in Pokemon alone. So if you are banking on, and all of this stuff you have to pre-order as well, months out basically. And so if you are banking on a certain product selling for at least retail or over retail, typically speaking, you're going to order a lot of that product. Like if you can buy something for a distribution price and you can almost guarantee that it's going to sell at MSRP or more, and most of the time these things are selling for more, Pokemon, you max out your allocation. So the situation that a lot of LGSs were in is this. You were given a terrible 2022 year. 2022 has been just god awful for every single set that's come out. It's just got smashed. Basically, if you are a TCG and you're operating in the bear market that is 2022 or an LGS, you're going to need a little help. You're going to need a strong IP. You're going to need a lot of secondary market support to really keep your prices afloat. And so when Charizard UPCs came out, they were the only product that anyone was poised to make any money on. Magic the Gathering is literally on fire right now. The last 4 or 5 sets that any LGS has bought for Magic the Gathering, which they have to buy because it's their main lifeblood of what keeps their business afloat, has been a losing venture, which is upsetting because of the reason for why that is, which we don't have to go into. It's a Wizards of the Coast thing. And so Yu-Gi-Oh! Is often, I'm sure it's probably doing fine because they're just doing their own thing. I'm sure modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Is selling just fine, but I admittedly don't know a lot about that. So we'll just call that like a neutral situation. Maybe you're making money at Yu-Gi-Oh! Right now, which is awesome if that's the case, but I doubt it. I doubt that any LGS is making a lot for any of these games. So most LGSs saw the Charizard UPC and they saw it as this shining hope, this little thing that around the holiday season, it would be the only thing that they'd be able to make any money on. And so they went all in. So when they were told that they could pre-order, they probably pre-ordered more than they ever would have pre-ordered in any previous year because they had to probably make up for some money that they were leaving on the table with all these dumpy, crappy products. And so Pokemon, instead of doing the same thing that they did with every other product and throttle it back and kind of hold back the reprint, they really decided that on this one, they were going to make sure that it was really going to be printed to the ground. And so they did. They opened the doors and they printed it up. And most of these local game stores, they didn't have the $20,000 to literally buy all of this dead product because it wasn't one LGS that did this. It wasn't your local scalper LGS who's like trying to sell you the UPC for $300 who ordered a pallet or 2 pallets of UPCs. No, every LGS did. Even LGSs that didn't deal in Charizard were probably ordering this Charizard UPC. Walmart had pre-orders for 10 units up for hours on their pre-ordering, a couple of weeks before it came out. And that was really writing on the wall for how much was going to be printed too. And so people were basically foaming at the mouth to make money in this space. And so all of the biggest businesses in the space ended up just going all in on it. And it's not even 30 days out from that initial release. It's almost 30 days out. And people have been dumping like wildfire. And it's not because it's a bad product. Everyone's wondering, like, I don't get it. I would love to have Charizard UPCs at $80. Like, I don't get it. Why are people dumping for? It's like nobody has 20 grand right now to have tied up in this Charizard UPC when you got Scarlet and Violet coming out. You got V-Star Universe, Crown Zenith coming out. You got literally all these things that people care about so much more because now that everyone's failed at the Charizard UPC play, the grading play, it's crickets on YouTube. Like nobody cares. Nobody does. So yeah, so viewer, if you're thinking about and you're thinking to yourself, why are people selling these things for $80 right now? It's not because they don't like the product, guys. It's because they literally got bait and switched by Pokemon by how much was printed. And now they're stuck with these 20 grand invoices or however, I'm saying an arbitrary number. It's probably less or more than who knows what your individual LGS situation is. But I just know that anyone who ordered a lot of those things, they probably aren't all like you said, like Rudy. They're probably not all holding for indefinite amounts of time. They probably had a small intention to sell. And when every single person is doing that and every business is doing that and going all in on it, and it's the only thing that's available, it's almost a sure thing to fail. And it's just, it sucks to see. It really does. It's tough to see that, you know?
100%, man. It's it's not a good situation right now for a lot of the game stores out there.
Yeah, and that being said, go support your local game store. I feel like lately these live streams or these like interviews, I always end up at some point shilling local game stores. But being someone who really grew up, now when you were younger, did you have, from what you told me about having to go door to door, like checking, like playing Pokemon and like finding people to trade with, did you have a local game store in your town growing up, like to really go and enjoy, or was that something you never got the privilege of?
Not for Pokemon, they existed, but I never went. Didn't know they existed because I was so young. I was like 9 or 10.
Mm.
But it wasn't until Yu-Gi-Oh when I'd actually do in-person tournaments and I started learning where these LGSs were. And then that was spent a lot of my time there.
Yeah, I legitimately remember spending time after school. Like a lot of my dad worked at a mechanic shop that was like right around the corner from an LGS. And so like I would go after school, I would get dropped off at the LGS. And then when my dad would get off of work a couple hours later, like at 5 or 6 o'clock or whatever, he would pick me up from the LGS. So it almost felt like it wasn't like a daycare, but it was like an after school program that I would go and hang out with my friends and play Pokemon, Magic the Gathering, and like the owner was really cool. There were like computer games always hooked up, like Diablo and StarCraft, and Warcraft was always like land up in the back of the shop, and like it was next to a movie theater, and it was just always a place to hang out. And it was like a safe place to be like a preteen and a teenager that I feel like is way better than any YMCA or whatever that a community could offer. So I've always been an advocate for like the LGS because I feel like it's not just a good place for someone nerd like me who wants to sell his Pokemon cards and have like a booming economy and, you know, scalp and all that stuff, but for like a safe place in the environment of like a younger teenager who maybe doesn't have a great home life. Like you can go to an LGS and meet like-minded people, find friends, and you know, maybe be less awkward about social things, and like you can develop some skills. So like I've always been a big advocate for that. So I always turn into a little bit of a show when we start talking about LGSs because I just think they're a useful thing for the hobby.
Yeah, I like you had Friday night Magic, I had Friday night Yu-Gi-Oh, and my parents would drop me off at like 5:30, and I'd be there till they'd have to pick me up when the store closed at midnight. And I was like babysitter essentially. I was an adult, could have babysat myself probably, but I guess it was better than sitting there playing Call of Duty or Vice City for hours on end. So interacting with humans is good.
Yeah, and that's what I think is lost on a lot of the community sometimes when, especially when it booms and a lot of the LGSs kind of get a lot of hate because there's not a lot of product to go around and the product goes up in price and people rah rah rah. It's one of the things that we really shouldn't take for granted, LGSs. So I always like to kind of say the good things I can about them because with all the memes and all the jokes about, you know, me and Mason have back and forth, I really do. I value what all LGSs bring to the table, regardless for the most part, you know, because it's not like they're peddling toilet paper out here, guys. I think that's the one thing that people don't realize about this stuff is like nobody's being forced to buy or interact with any of this stuff. You don't have to have Pokemon cards to live. Like it's all a luxury good. So that's
Yep.
the thing. It's like if people were out here like scalping sanitizer and formula and toilet paper and you know space heaters and you know needed necessities, you know, all these things that you literally need to live. I think there's some ethical, moral things that I would probably have to say about potentially, depending on the situation. But when it comes to Pokemon cards, I have zero. I don't care at all. Literally, I people, and this is probably because I'm a scalper, but I literally have no sympathy for anyone who gets all mad or butthurt about their local LGS selling for higher than their friend's local LGS or this guy online in their
Yeah.
basement who they can buy from for cheaper. I don't give a damn. I hope that the person is selling it for $300, sells it for $300, and the person who bought it from him was stupid enough to buy it for $300 when they could have went somewhere and bought it for $100. I personally think that the consumer is far more responsible than people in this space like to let on. So I just all the virtue signaling that I always hear in like the Pokemon space, like rar rar rar, scalper this, scalper that. It's like just give it a rest. Like, are we talking about Pokemon cards? Or are we talking about freaking toilet paper here? Like, what is going on? What are we doing? So I always find it to have those conversations to be kind of funny.
Yep. We're in for a ride.
Yeah, and you don't deal as much in modern as I do, I don't think, typically. I know that you recently dealt with modern Pokemon as far as English is concerned with the Gengar, and you got completely wrecked, which, welcome to modern English Pokemon. So I do know that the 10s are really nice, but they're hard to get. As someone who grades trainer galleries, the garbage quality of trainer galleries. So, tinfoil hat here, do you think that they have like a different blade that they swap out for like the ultra rares and then all of the other cards? Because I definitely do.
Yeah, in my discussions with the head grader at CGC, he had let on that when he went there, basically they do different cutting techniques for different rarities, essentially. When you look at code cards, you know how bad those look, right?
It looks like they literally took him outside and played volleyball with him out in the back.
Yeah.
There's shoe prints on the code cards. And I'm like, did they go dig through my garbage can in here in California and recycle the code cards that I threw away from my streams? And then they're using them in the next set, and that's how they're getting the code cards. Because to me, in my head, it's the only way that they could come out looking the way that they do, like straight out of the factory.
I think there's also a difference between the two locations that are making cards for English now. It's I feel like it's not every other set, but you look at the like the Moonbryon set, the Evolving Skies, that thing's beautiful. Like it's those
The
cards
ultra
are
rares, but the
yeah,
regulars, the
yeah,
ultra the flat ultra rares, like the V's, they're garbage, man.
yep,
They're horrible. They actually oftentimes I've found in most evolving skies, and because once again you may not have opened a lot of this, but if you turn around the V's in evolving skies, a lot of the time they did not wait the half a second long enough that they needed to let the sheet dry before they put the sheet in front of it on top. And you can see a faint impression of the Pokeball design from the back of the sheet on every ultra rare, or not every ultra rare, but probably like 1 in 4 ultra rares. I first thought I turned the card over and I was examining it on a whatnot stream while I was opening the packs. I thought that someone stepped on the card, like there was a shoe print, because when the light hit it, you could see like the outprint of the Pokeball. But then on further examination under the light and looking at it, it was actually a ghost Pokeball hollow. And I thought, first of all, I was like, whoa, that's a cool error if this is like a rare thing. I looked at all the ultra rares. There's
yeah.
1 in 4, 1 in 4 of them on the back of them. If you look really closely, we sent them as a test to CGC. They didn't catch it. They didn't catch it. None of them. And
Did
so,
you pay for the $5 error
no,
designation? You just
no.
wanted it.
I never pay for the error designation because I feel like, first of all, well, okay, here's my thought process behind paying for it. I pay for it when I don't think it deserves the error and I want to make sure it gets it. So if it's just a little bit OC and I think and I know it's not going to get a 10, but I want it to get an OC grade and send it to CGC. If I send it to them with no sub, with like no error, $5 extra, they'll just put an 8.5 on it and call it a day. But if I actually pay the $5 extra, they'll give it subs and they'll call it an error, or they might not give it subs. Those called a minor miscut,
Yeah.
or and it's better than getting like an 8.5 basically for the extra $5. But if I ever have a legitimate error, I never pay the extra $5 because they always catch it. Every time they do. And the
But
only time they
the
didn't was that time when I sent a bunch of the evolving skies. I sent like Rayquaza V, Umbreon V, like the just regular garbage V cards, thinking, oh, they'll catch a couple of these. I'll get some errors and some nines, and nope, nothing. I didn't want to pay the $5 extra because it was like on a card like that. It was, first of all, it was a little bit of an experiment, but at the same time, it just wasn't worth it on a card like, I shouldn't have been grading that card to begin with, you know. So
might be a play though. You saw the price of some of the nutrition fact garbage stuff. So
that's true. I've since gotten rid of a lot of those, and so a
yeah.
lot of but there's still, you can just go buy, excuse me,
But
a bunch of them and turn them over, and if you get your light, you can see a lot of them have it. Like, it might have been from my distributor, a lot of the cases that I had. It wasn't every case in my box, but it was like 1 in 4 of all the V's. So it
yeah.
was pretty much, it was very prevalent.
Yeah, it
Very,
reminds me of the first edition base because you have some of those cards where they did stack them too early, and some of the backs of the cards have the first edition like stamp on there. It's pretty crazy.
yeah, and that's the variant. That's what happens. And so with modern, they were running it at full speed, and they literally didn't want to wait the half a second or give it one more burst of air to dry it off, or whatever they do in their final steps before they stack the sheets together. But in evolving skies with the regular V's, garbage. But with the V Maxes and the textured cards, they went at that with like a fine-tooth comb. They were really, really careful with it. So like with the Umbreon VMAX sheet or the VMAX alternate art sheet, they probably got their best senior cutter on the cut line, you know, whereas they got Timmy, you know, first day Timmy intern doing the character rares, as you saw with Gengar. It looks like every single character rare has like a fray, you know, an afro, you know, like it looks like as my sideburns there on the side of the card, you know what I mean?
Yep.
It's pretty prevalent. So I personally deal in mostly English, so I'm right there with you, buddy. I get slaughtered sending most of the time with my English cards. I even choose the best ones to send too.
Yeah, I had, just for those of you who don't know what I did, I bought 23 Gengar alternative arts from Lost Origins, and one of them, in my opinion, was like a slam dunk 10. Essentially, it was like the A plus plus in my brain. I was like, this one's gonna get a 10. If I sent all these, it may be 50-50, which might have been worth it. I don't know, but the one did come back a 10, so I might have broke even. I haven't even sold it yet. But yeah,
it's a cool card. The Gengar character rare that you're talking about is probably one of the best character rares they've come out with, in my personal opinion. So you chose a good card.
Yeah.
They do grade those pretty hard though. And it's not that they grade them. Actually, I take that back. It's not that they grade them hard. It's just that the quality is really bad. So I think they grade them pretty easy compared to how the quality is.
Yep. Yeah. And looking back on like I was mentioning when we kind of got into that, like the different locations that are making the cards, because you look at the first printing of Evolutions, completely dog bleep. Like the pop on the Charizard was like 100, 104 for a while or whatever it was, maybe 120, and it kind of was just stagnant. And then second Revolution came out, and now it's over 300. Like it just, they can change, they print them differently on different locations or different presses, and yeah, just depends on the set. Like Kyogre amazing rares, not a good card. It is similar to the Gengar, I'd put it. Like it's like you gotta go through them because the centering on Shining Face was terrible. Yeah, it's, I don't know, it's crazy the variation you still get set to set, which is good for English because then you got conditional rarity, which Japanese, everything's a 10 a lot of the time. So
I was going to ask you what you thought about that. Would you rather a set have really, really bad conditions so that conditional rarity helps to prop it up over time with that hunt? Or do you think that strengthens it? Or do you think the bad print quality actually does hurt it because it's worse quality and people see that and they want the good quality cards? I would be curious to hear what you think about that, being a big condition rarity guy.
yeah, so I do like the fact that it gives me something to chase. I don't think I would care so much about my amazing rare Kyogres if there was more than 4 perfect ones out there, but it's been at 4 since the set came out. But I also do like the chance, like if I'm grading the cards, I'd rather go towards Japanese because the prices are easily the same. Some of them are higher if they're waifus and stuff like that. Or
Yeah, it's the Japanese market. It like knowing what we know about grading is it doesn't make sense, does it? I mean, I don't have to. It doesn't have to make sense, but I'm just saying it's just crazy.
so much easier to grade. I
Yeah,
would never to get a positive EV out of a booster box. English is scary as hell. Like if you're trying to crack a modern box to make money, like the odds of get similar to Watsy, it's crazy. It hasn't improved in 25 whatever years. You could still get a whole brand new booster box and walk away with 0-10, like in the ultra rare. So it's crazy.
I have to say it. Whenever we talk about plus EV, there's only one set that I can think of that is plus EV to a vintage set to open, and it's the one that I am like most in love with opening. It's Sandstorm. So if you're watching right now, if you're gonna open one set, the only set that you can open that's plus EV that I am aware of is Sandstorm. It is a ridiculous set.
Yeah,
Chilling it up.
there you go. No, it's cool watching that get open. How much are those packs? 200 bucks?
150, $200.
Yeah.
You can get them pretty regularly for between 100. I pick them up in auction for like my meme price is 169.
Is
I
that
get a pack for 169.
Yeah.
I'm happy, and they're also hard to weigh. In that,
okay, that's what I was going to ask.
yeah, they're not unweighable. They are weighable, but there are two different print runs of Sandstorm. There's international, and then there's English, and then there's regular. Like mainland, I guess, American. And there's the one with the oval stamp on the back and the one without the oval, like Nintendo stamp on the back. And so the ones with the international are impossible to weigh. There's no data out them. There's no database. There's nobody who knows it. I personally know about the weights of those, but they're a much bigger toss-up. The English ones are more, there's more data out there to be weighed, but the weights are so far and away different than what people are used to from pack weighing. And most people don't do the extra research when it comes to that mid-era to learn what individual, because every set has different pack weight spreads. Like you can't look at one pack weight and say, oh, a pack from this era, from this is going to have X, Y, or Z in it. Every single set has a different set of weight mechanics to it.
Wow.
Because like they were experimenting with the reverse hollows and all those sets. They were putting new EX era stuff. They were putting secret rares in, like in Unseen Forces. One of the reasons you cannot really weigh Unseen Forces is because of the unknown secret rare subset that's in Unseen Forces. It's a holographic in the reverse hollow, but instead of being the reverse hollow, which weighs a little bit less, it weighs closer to a normal card when you actually weigh the packs. It weighs closer to a hollow, so it's a little heavier. So oftentimes when you get a heavier Unseen Forces pack, it could be a hollow pack because it could have an unknown in it as a secret rare. It weighs a little bit more, or it could have an EX, or it could have just a regular rare reverse, which has an extra layer of gold foil. Because in the EX era, if the regular rares, the star is gold and the name is gold, there's an extra layer of gold foil on the reverse hollow rares. That adds weight. And so that throws off the weight too. So if you get a pack that has both the hollow and that, it's going to feel really, really heavy, but it's not necessarily going to have an EX. Whereas if you get a really heavy pack, it could have an EX or it can have nothing in it, So the era that is mid-era is a vast, vast, wild, wild west of a playground of an era that, to be honest, when people are purchasing packs, as long as you don't think the pack is resealed, or as long as you can trust the source it came from, most of the time you don't have to worry about packs being weighed from that era.
Yeah, that's good. That's
EXs, awesome. I've opened, secret rares. I've opened legend cards from the Heart Gold Soul Silver era. I've opened primes. The only thing I haven't opened from those eras are a gold star yet. I haven't gotten a gold star yet, but I've gotten level X's. We haven't opened crystal card yet, but I have opened a shining. We opened a shining Noctowl.
Nice.
Which was, from Destiny. That's a cool. That was really nice. I was happy with that. So
badass. That'd be cool.
But yeah, it's the packs from that era are so cheap too. Like some of them, like the Ruby Sapphire, the Sandstorm, the the um those eras are not a very like sought after era because it wasn't when we all collected, but
Yeah.
they're so low population and they're relatively cheap, and the information about weighing and weights is just not out there, that they're very, very fun, I think, as opening experiences for like people to get into. So like if you're listening this far, here's my tip to you. If you're wondering where, I don't want to say it's safe because it's definitely not safe buying loose packs right now. I've gotten resealed packs like 3 to 4 times in the last 10 purchases that I've made in the last couple of months, which is really, really bad. Like before this last few months, for some reason, the reseals have been really prevalent. Before
Oh,
that, it wasn't as bad, but it's been really bad lately. So just if anyone's watching, take what I say with a grain of salt, and do know there are some risks involved, and be very, very careful and make sure you're opening that pack within the 3-day window of the eBay money back guarantee if you really are going to risk it for the biscuit. Because I wouldn't be buying packs to sit on loose in any case, unless it came from like TCA Gaming and he could tell me where it came from. And I'm like, all right, Rusty, only because it's you. But if it
yeah.
was literally anyone else, even my own mother, I would be looking at them side eyed, because most packs loose, if they don't have Providence or if they don't have long stem, I don't want that shit. The only reason I could do it is because I turn them so quickly on my whatnot channel that it literally, I'm the minute I get the pack, I'm streaming that either that night or the night after. Someone usually is buying up the pack. I can
Yeah.
open it on stream, provide a guarantee that it's real. If it's not, I can get my money back, completely refund my customer, and everybody's golden. And it's all recorded and everything's golden. So the only reason I can do this, chat and everyone, is because of my situation. So don't go and FOMO into loose packs just to throw in your closet, because you'll probably, when you end up opening them up, go get a couple reseals there. So it's a shame. It is a shame that that's a thing.
Yeah. I blame PK. No.
I mean, PK is one of the biggest, most vocal people about reseals out there. And his early videos where he do all those reseal videos were really, really funny. Like, and just
Yeah.
the whole like in the Leonhardt pop-up shop with basic trainer and like the GI Joe cards being in the packs, those were so funny. Like the guy is a master at his craft of resealing. So yeah, just look out for the Pokemon knowledge eBay when you're buying packs. Just kidding, PK. I know you're not out here doing that. But yeah, thanks to people like PK, though, there's a little more awareness being put out there. And I also try to spread awareness about it too, because I do deal so much in vintage packs. Like I feel fortunate enough to deal in it, but it's only because of my situation. That's why.
Yeah.
I wouldn't feel that way if it wasn't for my particular situation.
Yeah. 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 I haven't ever dealt with buying any loose packs like that, but I definitely like watching PokeRes video, and he got burned because he bought whatever it was and let it sit for a month, and then no eBay guarantee after that. So he kind of just burned. It's crazy.
Yeah, and you would think that there are ways to tell, but there aren't ways of telling until you actually open it, because you sometimes with a crimp, you can even fake a crimp. Like a lot of the time, a telltale sign is you got to look at the crimps of the pack. And if the crimps of the pack are actually smooth and flat in any regard, like it looks like someone took a clothes or like a hair straightener and they
Yeah.
just kind of sealed it together. If it looks like that, it's probably because that's exactly what happened. Usually with Pokemon, when they seal the packs, there is actually a crimping, a little bit of texture. Just look at the top of the pack, you'll see it. And if it doesn't have that texture there, most of the time it's a reseal. And so you just have to look for that first of all. But even with that, you can still fake that. I have had good enough reseals in the recent times. I had an expedition booster pack that I had from a reputable source, some person who sells packs like 100% feedback, thousands of reviews, sells packs on a regular basis, looked fantastic, weighed on point, everything was right about this thing. We sold it, and it ended up being a resealed pack. Luckily, we sold it within the 3-day window, and
Nice.
luckily the seller was really, really a reputable seller, and they ended up refunding without having us to open up a case or any of that stuff. But it was a resealed expedition pack, and it was resealed in such a way that it was done by a professional, because it was all expedition cards, but they're all like mod played, light played expedition cards. Like you could tell the whitening wasn't on the corners like you would see right out of the factory sometimes. It
Yeah.
was like in the middle of the card. It was like a chip here in the middle of the pack on a common. You're like, that's, and then the reverse had like scratches on the front. And you're like, that's not a expedition pack fresh pack. So
Wow.
it still can happen even when it looks good to someone like me, who I consider myself very knowledgeable about that kind of thing. So
Yeah. Wow. Do you have I'm sure, a huge spreadsheet of all the different weights?
yeah, it's actually online too. And one of these days I should probably link it. There's a person by the name of Weiss in the E4 community who's been in this community far longer than I have. When I first got back into the community and the hobby, he was one of the first people I reached out to, even before I had a YouTube channel. And I was opening packs and recording weights. And I was also just looking at other people online as they were opening packs and recording the weights as what they got. And I went and found his online database on E4 almost immediately. And I started sending this guy so many pack like weights to add to the database. And my now, like, I would see someone open one online, I'd see the data, I'd see it wasn't on there. I'd be like, hey, I got some more data for you. Or I would open one. And early days of my channel, I was sending him all this stuff. He eventually was like, dude, you just take this and you can have some of, you add it as you like. So now I think he and like myself and one other person are like the 3 editors of that pack weight database online. So like,
Nice.
link that down below for anyone who needs it. If I don't link it below, just reach out to me and I can link you to it. It's just me forgetting. So it's a long podcast, so we're already like 2 hours in. So if it doesn't get there, it's just reach out to me and we'll get you the data. It is online publicly. If you just look at like Pokemon pack weight database on Google, it's the very first top Google docs that comes up. It'll take you to like a forum on E4. You click on the little link and it brings you to a Google Doc, and it gives you all of the pack weights from what's recorded, from what people actually cared to put in there and report, and then actually record on the database. Which it isn't always up to date, always completely up to date. Like it takes a while for people to actually get things added because there's only a few editors. It can't be open source, all that stuff has to be a trusted source, all that. And so it goes all the way to Diamond and Pearl era. So you can look at every single set, and it started to be Black and White era, it's started to get added too. So there's just not a lot of data about that mid era though. And a lot of it you'll find even looking at the database, there's a heavy side and a light side, and on the spreadsheet you can put it shows down to the hundreds. A couple people are overachievers and they go down to the thousands, but you really, with Pokemon pack weighing, going to the hundreds is plenty. 2 decimals is fine. And so most of the pack weight spread you'll see after WotC, it varies widely, and so you'll see the same weight in both the red and the green column. So like if you're looking at, for example, Dragon Frontiers pack, a 17.46, that would be in a lot of weights for like a Sandstorm pack, that's very heavy. Or for like a Delta Species pack, that's pretty heavy. For a Dragon Frontiers pack, it's not that heavy, man. It could be a heavy, but it could also be a light, and you can see the same weight have both the same. So it's very dependent on the individual print run. So like the database is only as good as you can make it be, basically.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. I didn't know that existed.
Information though, so
yeah, I need that for Yu-Gi-Oh. I'm sure it exists. I just haven't looked it up.
I actually would be curious. So with Magic the Gathering, pack weighing is not a thing. You cannot weigh Magic the Gathering packs. The way they do the foiling is just different. So it's just a different situation. Instead, you can search Magic the Gathering packs, which searching packs is different because you're not actually weighing anything. You have the pack in your hand, and you're either, in the case of the old packs that have the white tops that are still a little translucent, you're actually pushing the cards up and you're holding a flashlight and you're looking to see the name of the card on the top of the card, and you can go card by card to see what's in the pack. And that's what called pack searching is in Magic the Gathering. That's long been a thing, and that's why you can't really buy loose Magic the Gathering packs and expect them to not be searched, especially the old ones. When they introduced foils in Magic the Gathering, the packs didn't weigh differently because the way they did the foiling, they didn't add an extra layer. The whole card is foil. It's not an extra layer. It's just a totally different technique. So the packs actually weigh the same, but the cards themselves are slick. They actually feel, they're smooth, and they're curved just a little bit.
Yeah, the
So
curve's bad.
search the packs by doing the same thing and just looking for those slick cards, and they're always usually in the same spot in the pack too. So that's how those errors of packs are searched. So like with Magic the Gathering, we have the same issue, but it's a different issue, but it's still an issue in its own right.
Yep.
Yeah, so I would be curious if Yu-Gi-Oh, if it's like if weighing it was a thing, or if it's like searching, or if it's like no such thing. Because like with MetaZoo, you can't weigh MetaZoo packs. They all.
Yeah, you can weigh vintage for sure. For Yu-Gi-Oh, which is what I did for mine. I only wanted to open heavies, which ended up opening, I think, 3 additional because there was a little overlap. But similar to WotC, you could weigh out heavies, and but yeah, it's not too bad.
Yeah, and personally, I've never felt like the ethicsy or the morals of that. I didn't never feel like that was like a gray area or like something that was shady. I always found. What do you feel about that whole situation? Do you like? I mean, because like some people, I don't reaching out to people because I buy a lot of vintage packs. If they put unweighed on the description, I don't really like that very much, and especially if they're charging like a heavy or a premium. I
Yeah,
oftentimes will reach out to those people and I'll say, hey, do you mind disclosing the weight, or if not, selling it as a light pack? Because most likely it's going to be light, or for the prices of a light pack. And sometimes they're like, oh yeah, no problem, I'll weigh it, and then they'll show it and that's great. And I'm happy with that. I'll usually pay a little extra, obviously, because if it's going to be heavy, then you know it's heavy. But the funny thing is, sometimes people, they won't just say no. They'll say, I would never. I pack weighing. I don't even know how a scale would work. They're like, I can barely get my faucet to work, bro. You think I can actually put a pack on? And they start to get all indignant and like backpedaling. They're like, I've never seen one of those scales in my life, sir. What do you think I am, a weed dealer? And then they're like, just because you ask them to weigh the pack, they get all weird about it and they like claim they would never. And I just find that to be a weird way of virtue signaling that you actually are selling like, like packs, because
yeah,
it's just one of those things. I don't sell packs on my channel that aren't weighed. I legitimately will not sell a vintage pack on my channel that's not weighed. Like if it's light, it doesn't need to be open. That's what I don't get. It's like if it's light, it shouldn't be open. If it's heavy, it needs to be open. So every loose pack needs to be weighed to know what you do with it. Otherwise, you're just gambling it away and wasting it away. It's really very easy. It's a very easy math. You weigh the packs that are loose and you call them what they are. And the ones that aren't, I guess you just, who knows? You just sell on eBay as unweighed.
yeah, that's where it gets a little dicey. But yeah, basically, I take them and I'll probably grade them once the price of grading's cheaper for those. But I 100% weighing's okay, just as long as you're respectable with what you're doing. But I have purchased unweighed packs from somebody, but it's usually somebody reputable. If I bought from somebody that's not reputable or they got a little suspect, I would definitely be asking them for the weights and we would work it out that way. But yeah, was able to successfully buy some unweighed packs from Instagram seller, and it was an awesome experience this year.
Yeah, and that's not to throw shade at anyone who does do unweighed and sell packs out of box breaks. Like I know Z and G Emporium used to do that. And he actually did sell unweighed packs. He wasn't weighing them out.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that people don't do it or anything. I'm more so commenting on the like random eBay listings that are like unweighed and and then they get all indignant because like if someone's running a box break and like you don't want to weigh the packs out because it takes away from the fun of the chase of knowing, of like not knowing and then knowing. Some people want that experience. They want to do the card trick and they want to wait until that last card to get that adrenaline hit, and that's why they bought into the box break. So like to know that it's a non-hollow or a hollow before you open it, it takes away all the fun. It's like having the code cards be spoiled for you in modern, like before you even open something. So
that's the dumbest thing in the world. Yeah.
I hate it. As a pack breaker, it irks me so much that they do that. So like, but yes. So I understand that too, like the want of the chase and everything of the unweighed pack. So like that's a whole nother thing, and I get that. And on Instagram with a good person in the community, you can definitely like. I just recently opened up a first edition Neo Genesis booster pack, and I bought them as unweighed, and it had a hollow. So one had a hollow and one didn't. So that is unweighed,
Good.
as unweighed as you can go.
Yeah.
They were basically light prices, so it was just sold as an auction on eBay, and I just bid and won. So it was very much so. I felt lucky about that, and I also know a couple things about Neo Genesis that you can't really weigh it in general. So it's one of those sets that you really can weigh, but it doesn't matter. So the hollow that we pulled was the metal energy. This
Yeah.
hollow was in a lighter pack, a pack that I opened that had a non-hollow in it. So
Wow.
like that's just, and it came from the same seller, same box, same everything. So if that doesn't tell you that there is, there's a range with certain sets, then I don't know what will. And that
Yeah.
pack weighed at 20.81 grams. So it would have been considered light by anyone's standards in most WOTC terms.
Mm-hmm.
So it is what it is. So yeah, I sorry about anyone who's listening. You're like, I thought this was an interview for the DaGreenshiz. I didn't think we were going to talk about pack weighing for like half an hour. And it is an interview for the DaGreenshiz, because next, after talking about that whole situation, we're going to ask him one of the more important questions. And I actually did want to hear what he said about this. When we first started, I gave him a little heads up about this question, but I want to know, we always try to ask this question to all of our guests, and some have answers and some don't. And it's a very lofty question, because for me, I don't have an answer to this question. But if you, maybe I do, but if you had one card or one collection piece, since we've been talking so much about collecting, that you could have, that you don't currently have, that you could just put in your collection, slot it in, but you would never be allowed to resell it. If you could, it doesn't have to be a Pokemon card either. It could be like a statue. You want one of those like Pokemon Center statues that they had in front of the Pokemon. I mean, sure, whatever you want, but what would it be if you had one thing that you could have?
I'm just gonna stick with what we know. With collectibles. I really do like the movie 42. A big sports fan. That's the Jackie Robinson baseball movie. His rookie card would be pretty peak for me. It's extremely expensive.
Oh yeah, what year is he? What year is that from? Like the 60s or something?
56 is coming to my brain. I don't remember if that's it or
So it's
not. But,
really old, and that's like back when they made the card stock on like newspaper, basically.
yeah, it's awesome. I was able to see it. I went to baseball card exchange in Indiana and saw it in person, and along with a really low grade Mickey Mantle and some other insane cards.
You actually saw one in person?
Yeah, they have crazy stuff there. It's
That's
awesome.
cool. I
They
don't
have,
even care about sports, but that's really cool. I would care about that.
it was like a museum inside of their new building. They have a new building there. They made all that money off Logan Paul in his video. So yeah, it was awesome. It was awesome to go in there. They have tons very modernistic type LGS, and it was really cool to check it out. Highly recommend if anybody's in Northeast Indiana or Chicago.
I thought they were in Canada. I didn't realize they were in the US. That's kind of funny.
Yep, northwest Indiana, right, like literally 30 minutes from Chicago, probably. But yeah, that card, I'd give you a Pokemon card too. Is probably the TMB Zapdos phone card in a PSA 10.
I know that card. That's a scarce one, and that's a really random one too. Is it an expensive card? I'd imagine it is, right?
Yeah, the people that are selling their 10s are asking $20,000. I haven't seen one sell in a while. There's a PSA 8 or an 8.5 up there for 10 grand. Oh man, there's another. I'm gonna give you a Yu-Gi-Oh card as well. Crush Card Virus from the Shonen Jump Championship. It's like the only prize card I think I'd ever want to own. Basically it was awarded to people who won the Shonen Jumps, which was like regionals for Pokemon, or you won the nationals. You would get a prize card that people would then put into their deck because it was so overpowered.
Oh, so it was actually a good card too. Interesting.
Yep. so people that were winning these tournaments got basically a god card in their deck, one of card, and if you drew it, you pretty much clapped your opponent's cheeks
That's
right
the
off the rip.
last thing those guys need. The guys who are winning the tournaments, just the rich get richer, huh? Is that how Yu-Gi-Oh
That's
works?
exactly what that was, the most overpowered card in the world. Then they reprinted it finally, and I was first to buy one off. And that was like my biggest. That was in 2009. I was like, all right, I'm dipping my toes into Yu-Gi-Oh again. I'm buying this Crush card. It was $200. It's still $200. The reprint.
So what's it called? It's
Crush Card Virus. It's probably one of the most powerful cards they ever made in the game. But it's pretty much I'm going to tell you what it does. A lot of people don't know know Yu-Gi-Oh, but basically you destroy one of your monsters. It's a really low attack monster. You destroy it. It goes to the graveyard. Then you look at your opponent's hand, all of their monsters, and you destroy all monsters with greater than 1,500 attack. So they all go to the graveyard.
So it just nukes everything.
And then you look at their next 3 draws, and anything with more than 1,500 attack, it goes to the graveyard. So people were stacking the card in the tournaments on top of their deck and cheating, and it was a huge menace of society. And it's got errated and changed. And I think it's legal now, but it's errated to death. So
yeah, I recently watched a video on another YouTube channel of a Magic YouTuber learning how to play Yu-Gi-Oh, and it was just a really funny video because I imagined myself in that situation because like I'm a Magic player. So like they were explaining Yu-Gi-Oh in like Magic terms, and it was so weird to hear. It's so funny though.
Yeah, I went down a recent rabbit. Maybe it was similar people, but it seems to be a thing of content where people are like, I watch a Hearthstone guy experiencing Yu-Gi-Oh, like rating Pokemon, like, is this card good? Is this card bad? They're like, man, if that card came out in Magic, that'd be so good. Well, nobody plays it. It's trash. Like,
yeah.
it's pretty fun content.
Games have different like little niches that they but they do all correspond. Like I mean, if you love TCGs, you're probably into more than one. That's the one thing about this, and that's what you've just proven is like you gave me 2 non-Pokemon cards and a really cool Pokemon card too. I bet you'd be able to get that Zapdos for closer to like $3 to $5 grand if it ever went for auction though. As a 10, I bet.
I haven't seen one go for auction in 2 years.
They won't either. It's one of those cards that anyone who knows what they're doing, they won't put it up for auction. I don't believe that's a $10,000 card though. I believe that's a really cool card though.
I'm curious what Dubsy paid for his. That was like the first card he posted on his Instagram. So I'm like, oh boy, here it goes. It's getting shelled to the moon now.
I mean, it seems to me like a $2,000 to $3,000 card. It feels like a $2,000 to $5,000 card on a really bull market, but like it's because it's not. I mean, I don't know. Who's to say? I've sold Magi cards for 3,500. I've sold Topps cards that weren't 10s for big numbers. So I guess who knows what people are paying for in non-TCG? Because I was about to say it's a non-TCG card. But it is kind of a TC. It's kind of, I think non-TCG has more of a chance to go pop off than not, right?
Yeah, it's got the same art as the Zapdos from the Pokemon trading card game in the Game Boy, which I really liked. You got it from winning the tournament in the game or whatever. But yeah, it hits the nostalgia for me from that standpoint, but it's also just one of the rarer Zapdos cards outside of like the creatures deck and some of the other stuff like that. But yeah, it's slick.
Do you like the hollow the Zapdos Moltres Articuno Japanese exclusive that they did? I think it was like a gift starter set, or if it was like
it's the same print as the vending series but hollow.
Yes, that one. Yeah.
And then they reprinted it in English in Pokemon Go set, which is pretty.
Wait, that was reprinted in the Pokemon Go set?
Yeah, it's the same art, just newer looking.
Oh, really? Oh, that's cool.
You can't see it very good, but yeah, it's basically the same art.
I did not know that. I like when they do that.
It's like a very modernized look and take on it, but yeah. Shout out Echo Base Collectibles sent me that card. Freaking, he's a boss.
Oh, that's nice. Oh yeah, he loves Pokemon Go. I'm sure he has a few extra 9s sitting around or like extra Pokemon Go hollows sitting around too.
Yep. So that was awesome.
Echo is one of those people who makes plays that I actually really like. He makes a lot of plays that I also make because I like grading modern hollows of random promos and things too. So I always like seeing other people who do that.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, so I guess it being a non-trading card, it probably would drive the price up a little bit because it's more rare. Because like it's hard to find. That's a scarce card. Like I'm sure in the population report it's really low.
I haven't looked at it ever. I actually don't know the population, and I'm gonna look this second.
Before you look at it, what is your guess? Like a total graded versus tens. What is your guess? And I'll give you a guess, and we'll see how close we both are here, since we're both blind on it.
Total graded 105 tens. I'd say 11.
Okay, I'm gonna say I think there's gonna be more graded. I think there's gonna be about 300 graded, 300, and I'm gonna say 322 just to give an exact number. And as far as tens, it's probably 15. Maybe no. Let me revise that. Seven tens. All right, drum roll.
Oh, okay, yeah, it's the population on nines. 1 second, clicking on it.
There are other phone cards, right? There's
Articuno, Moltres. The Zapdos was graded 28 times.
Only 28 total. Whoa.
The whole set was graded 209 times.
So my number for that one card being graded was higher than the entire set's run of being graded the whole at all. So how many tens are there, did you say?
Half, so 50% 10 rate. So wow. 14.
Okay, so the ones that did get, so okay, this may be a situation of they haven't come to market yet.
Yeah, I don't know.
Right?
It could be. There's only 209 graded.
High. So if the 10 rate is that high, right? And if the card stock is good, and if the Japanese market hasn't traditionally been really big into grading until recently, it may or may not have been in the news enough to make headlines in Japan that you need to dig out in your closet and get all of your Japanese phone cards out. There may be sellers out there with still a good amount of this stuff potentially in Japan. I would bet in America there's no chance. Like SM Pratt sitting on a couple of them in his closet and that's it. But other than that in America, no chance.
I don't know. It's part of the 1999 Pokemon Japanese promo Tropical Mega Battle. So it's the tropical wins in that set, the number 1 trainer, number 2 trainer, number 3 trainer. There's a lot of eyes on a bunch of these. So I think it's pretty vetted if I would guess, but
okay. So it's not a matter of not coming to market, you don't think?
No.
It's just incredibly rare.
Yeah, I think there's 28 graded. There could be a bunch more that exist, but I doubt
10 rate being that high and the population being that low of total graded just leads me to believe that it's possible that not all of them have come to market, because you would see a bigger spread on a card with that much value if people just full sent everything because the card's that valuable and it's that scarce. You'd see a bigger spread of like 6s, 7s, and 4s, 5s, especially for that old of a card. But it just seems like the pop report is telling a different story than the price. That's all.
Yeah, that the tropical wind is pop 81 for tire graded. So maybe I don't know if there's the same quantity. So that right there would tell you
that there's at least 80. That's the most popular. That's the biggest card from the set, right?
Yes,
yeah. I mean, it's got to be. There couldn't be any bigger card in the set than that. So if there's 81 of those, it would be pretty likely to say there's at least 81 of the Zapdos, unless they were distributed differently, I guess. I mean, this is wild speculation. This is a guy in a closet, myself, who doesn't know anything about this set, speculating wildly. So anyone who's watching, shaking their fist at the air because I'm just like saying dumb things, I'm sorry. I apologize. I really don't know about this, but I am curious though, because it's like speculating on something like that. Like I love low pop stuff like that, especially things that grade nicely. We deal in that all the time here at the old card shop. Like that is my realm. And so like, I'm very interested. I try to read between the lines with that kind of stuff.
Yeah. 100%. No, it's something I haven't dug into because I know it's out there for me in price. So I have other things that are going to come before the TMB card. So
Are you chasing the base set first edition in a 10 or something, or are you happy with your 9 that you've got for your collection?
just the 9s, yeah. 10s are insane.
Yeah, what a 10 is like, what, 10 grand or something, 12 grand, something like that.
For which card?
A Zapdos first edition, probably.
Yeah, they've been selling around 7 grand.
Oh, okay, so a little bit less than I would imagine. Wow. I literally have no idea how some of these vintage cards are priced, just because I mean, who knows, but I've been off all night on those.
One just sold in Heritage Auctions. They had a signature that it sold for $3,500, which should have pulled the trigger on it, but
Wait,
I didn't.
3,500 for a PSA 10?
And then the Gyarados sold for 6 grand on Heritage. So
I mean, the Zapdos sounds like a much better deal than the Gyarados. That seems, because packs are 4 grand, 5 grand, depending on who you're asking.
I missed the auction. I would have been the buyer, but they both got picked up by Low Poppin', that son of a bitch.
Oh, Low Poppin'. Oh no. The Instagrammer. Yeah.
Yep.
As if he needs another first edition Zapdos.
He's gonna flip it, so I'll be the guy trading for it.
I was gonna say, as if he needs another one, he's just gonna sell it for what it's actually worth, like 5 to 6 grand, probably.
Yeah. Yep. He's a smart guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that the market always has places for arbitrage. That set right there, the fire red leaf green that you see right above me, and I'm pointing at, that's a theme deck display. Yeah, it's not a booster box, but I picked that thing up for like $500. And I just sold it this weekend. I think it sold for like 1,400 or something, but there are still definitely arbitrage, and that was an auction. I bought that in auction just because it was like no one was around. It was last January, I think. The market was looking at other things. It went low, and I was like, all right, I guess I'll buy it. But there's definitely times where you can literally just pick up things in auction on like the heritage auctions, which shout out to your channel. You're always doing great like live streams at the heritage auctions and stuff. So if anyone likes to go to a live stream and hang out and watch the auctions, DaGreenshiz does a really good one. But yeah, there's definitely some plays to move, just picking up auctions and then this listing them as buy it now, or finding the right buyer and connecting the buyer to him.
Yeah. Yep. I love it. It's fun. That's why that was my favorite PokeRef content. Him going through eBay, PWCC auctions, and then that disappeared when he got more mainstream, whatever, rightfully so. But I wish that I was able to stick around because that was cool.
Yeah, I just thought it was fun because it felt like it was like a Sunday morning thing when you do it, because you get like coffee out and you go out and like do it. It was a fun experience, and it felt like the chat wasn't as wild in as it is now. Like you could actually chat back then, I felt like. So now it's not the case anymore. So
that was when it was once a month on eBay, and I'd put it in my calendar. I'm like, oh sweet, I'm gonna watch Rev while this auction's happening. It's like I set it up as like that was my evening. Like, yep.
Yeah, those were fun. It was pretty bad when they broke up, when PWCC left eBay. I feel like that was a pretty, like, we talked about it. Content covered PWCC and eBay's breakup like incessantly as it was happening. Like, we got a lot of people content covering, but I feel like it's a bigger deal than we were even making it, and the ramifications of that are still being felt. We've talked about echo-based collectibles a lot in this podcast. So Joe, if you're watching, we love you, Joe. You do a good job with your content, but I hear you talk about this a lot because you used to sell. I feel like Joe used to sell a lot on PWCC, and so when they broke up and he had to start selling more on a different place, or they went off of eBay, he kept selling on PWCC. He was one of the first people who was like ringing the red flag, like, "Yo, these auctions are not what they used to be." And he said he stopped sending to them, I believe. So I think that the ramifications of that breakup are still being felt. And then moving to weekly auctions instead of monthly auctions, that was a really weird move. And then all these other auction houses kind of popping up and taking up that market share and becoming more visible, that also really hurt PWCC. And spreading out those eyes, it's not good for, well, it's good for the buyers. it is good for the buyers, but it's not good for the sellers, and it's not good, in my opinion, for the health of the hobby.
Yep. No, it's really good for the buyers. It's a play for sure. All the different companies that are selling.
Yeah, I do this full time, and I can't keep up with all the auction houses. And I know you do a regular YouTube series where you literally are watching them every week. And I'm sure you even have trouble keeping up with all of them, you know?
Yep. Yeah. 100%.
There's a dude who strictly covers auctions, and I think he said in his YouTube videos that he literally can't keep up on them. So I'm
Yeah, PWCC for context is like 2,400 cards they were doing every week, and which gives you like 4 seconds a card to look at it if you wanted to look at every card in the matter of 3 or 4 hours or whatever. So I couldn't do it. It was insane.
yeah, it's just too much.
Yeah.
And I think that with the holiday season coming up, we're going to see those consignment lots getting bigger and bigger because people are going to be dumping for the year end and all those bulk submissions coming back. I will say I'm probably not the only $15 submission that's coming back right now. I'm certain I wasn't the first, and I'm not the only one. So there's going to be other people who are looking to raise money and raise capital for end of year too. And if they're not dumping the Charizard UPCs because no one's buying them, what do you think they're going to dump? Yep. Okay, so we are getting to the point, the end game of the podcast here, where I start to ask you some fun questions here. So this is one that I'm not sure what you're going to say because I have a slight thought, but I'm curious to actually hear what comes out of what comes out. But this is one that we try to sort of wind down with. But if you could have any one Pokemon to follow you around, kind of as like a real life partner Pokemon. I'm not talking about something you're going to battle with or something you're going to be on your team of 6, just something that's going to hang out with you, kind of like Pikachu and Ash. Or if you could have one Pokemon that was your partner Pokemon, what would that be? Like, what would you choose, I guess?
Well, I'm afraid of heights, but I want to be able to fly anywhere. And so it's got to be a massive thing that can fly in the air. And I am drawing a massive blank on what the biggest flying Pokemon is to make me feel safe. I don't know what it maybe
You and I are of similar thought process, I think, here, because it would be, for me, I always say it would be Dragonite.
Yeah, probably Dragonite or a Charizard. Slap, because if I could toast some people with flamethrower while I'm flying over something would be great.
Bro, Hyper Beam though.
Yeah, I don't want to exhaust the guy while he's flying, but yeah. I know how you feel about flying, so I don't want to. I don't want to jeopardize anything. So.
I'm right there with you, buddy. I'm right there with you. I don't like flying either. I don't like heights either. So I'm full.
Yeah, planes are cool for me, but flying on a Pokemon that's using Hyper Beam, but it would be a little sus.
So not Zapdos though. So that being said, Zapdos, he's not big enough for you.
It sounds like it might be a bad time. I want something fluffy. He doesn't seem as fluffy as like a Dragonite or even a Charizard.
I feel like you get electrocuted. Like you would definitely be electrocuted by riding a Zapdos. Like a Dragonite or a Charizard, you might be able to get away with. The Charizard, you might get a little singed, but like a Dragonite seems soft. Like you hug a Dragonite.
Yeah, Zapdos would not be. You probably get there faster on a Zapdos, I would say, over a Dragonite Charizard, but it would be. Sure. It'd be like we're flying Spirit. It would be rough.
Yeah, it'd be spiky. It'd be pretty spiky too, I bet. He looked always really like jagged and spiky. Like Moltres looked kind of soft and flat, the flames are rounded.
Set on fire while you're flying, but yeah.
Yeah, that would be hurt. That wouldn't be good. I always wondered, like, whenever you saw the like Arcanine and like the trainer riding Arcanine, I always wondered how they like didn't get burned because that thing looked badass, but it looked hot too. Like, I felt like I would have wanted one, but as a kid, I was always afraid of getting burned. I was like, I don't know about that like main thing that's got the Rapidash and Arcanine have, you know what I mean?
Yep.
So, okay, good answer. It's a pragmatic answer. That's sort of the way I lean with it. Like my favorite Pokemon, it's Eevee, Dragonite, Charizard, kind of in that order. And I would say Eevee because it is like my favorite and you can evolve it into anything. But like pragmatically, a Dragonite would just be such a better partner Pokemon. So like it would be more useful. Like you can fly around. It's more intimidating if you need it to be. It's kind of cute and cuddly. If you don't want to be intimidating, it's like best of both worlds,
You ever see Big Hero 6?
Yes, I love
Reminds
that.
me of like Baymax, like
He's very much
Dragonite would
so.
be. Yep.
He's got the Baymax vibes. Yes, I
Yep.
wonder if they like were thinking of Dragonite when they were designing Baymax.
Probably not.
I know, but that'd be hilarious. Speaking of other, Pixar and stuff and those types of things, you said you were recently getting into Weiss Schwartz in the sense of the Pixar set. Have you had any more recent ventures with that or anything, or have you been enjoying that with your family? Like, what do you think about Weiss? Because we actually opened some of it on our channel too.
Yeah, so that was my first. I've never purchased or bought or had Weiss Schwartz in my hands until the Pixar set came out. I heard it on Basic Trainer. Shout out Basic Trainer, is one of his many hour live streams, um, and heard them talking about Lorcana, and then it transpired into Pixar. I was like, man, that would be cool just to open with my kids because they're 4 and 2 years old.
Mhm.
I recorded it, won't be uploaded on YouTube because my kids are running around naked the whole time.
Oh no.
One's in potty training, one's just a wild animal. And but yeah, so I was able to sit down, open it with a family. They're getting Mr. Incredibles and Buzz Lightyear, Zurg, and all the characters, and it was really cool to just have them know what they're opening. Like they could open a pack of Pokemon, but they'd just be like just not know what they're looking at.
Mhm.
Um, it was really cool. I only bought 2 boxes. I opened the one. I have one more to open, maybe Christmas Day or something with them. I don't know. But yeah, just put all the cards into their binder, didn't not grading anything. Um, it was just really cool to be able to do that. First time I've really opened any box with my kids, so that's
Yeah,
cool.
it's Weiss Schwartz is really, really good TCG because they venture into other IPs and they allow them to kind of play within their own game together while still making different IPs and stuff. And so it's kind of cool to see all these different like animes, Marvel, Pixar, like literally everything coming in. Yeah, and they do a good job with it, and the quality of the cards are really good, like the foiling pattern, the texturing on like the secret rares and the triple R. So in those boxes are there RRRs and then SRs and SPs and then all the SCRs and all the different rarities like a typical Weiss boxes.
Yeah, and I still don't know which one's the best. I don't know if it's SP or there's a PXR. Um, yeah, I'm not sure exactly which one's even the
The
rarest.
ones with the signatures on them are the best.
So these didn't have, at least none of mine had signatures.
Yeah,
Like
those
one
are
of
one
them,
per case, two per case usually.
yeah, yeah. So
But then after that, usually you'll get like a texture hit that's got like some extra added like sparkle and chrome and texture or whatever. Those usually are in every box. You get like one SPR or SR, or like one of the secret rare kind of hits. And then there's usually one that's like one in every couple boxes that's like a triple rare that also has texture usually. And it's usually really, really rare to get. And those are actually more rare than some of the signature rares because there's more of them and they don't come as often. But it's just it's different with every set. So like
yeah,
they're Weiss is really cool though, and like the card stock is really good, and I'm seeing a lot of people really enjoy it. Ironically, though, a lot of LGSs are dropping Weiss, and so I'm finding that it's struggling in this bear market, just like a lot of other things are.
yeah. I heard Rudy in one of his videos talk about it and about that almost simultaneously when I was buying Pixar boxes. He's like, "Yeah, it's not doing well." I'm like, "Man, it just it just hits the nostalgia strokes for me." I don't think I'm going to be a buyer collector of Weiss outside of Pixar, but looks similar to Magic the Gathering. I would maybe venture into some of the secret layers that are. It's cool to see that in a TCG like Stranger Things. I haven't purchased it, but it'd be cool to have a PSA 10, 11 or whatever. Just some of those cards would be pretty cool to have.
And I never thought of that. As a Magic player, the secret layers sort of trigger me a little bit. They are a little bit of like a in the community of Magic the Gathering, they were thought of as a cash grab by Wizards of the Coast, and it was sort
Yeah.
of the beginning of the end. And when it started, well, none of us liked it really, but we all saw the writing on the wall there. And so I've never heard that perspective from like a non-Magic player who's just looking at it from the outside in, just thinking it's kind of a cool crossover. Because I'm positive that there are other people who will probably feel the same way. Like if you like Stranger Things, like you said, but you don't care about Magic the Gathering, but you do want a graded 11 card, that gives you an avenue to have that. And that's so interesting. I never even thought about the other IPs and being collectible. So Magic the Gathering is not a collectible game. It is typically a player forward game, which is why I've never thought of it that way. So that's interesting.
Yeah, I don't know where I was talking about it. I think maybe it was with Swami in my last discussion with him, but I thought that Secret Layers was their first play into like modern collecting. Like they want to dip into that. They want that to kind of affect their stuff. And now you got what's going on now with $1,000 box, but all the Secret Layers are pretty much different IPs, right? Most of them.
Yes, and their first true. So Magic is funny. This is the thing. Magic is dying. Magic is dead. This is a conversation that has been had multiple times in Magic the Gathering's history. The first time Magic died was after Fallen Empires got literally destroyed. Well, it's not the first time. The first time it really died was probably after like fourth edition, right? Or that was around the same time period in the 90s. There was a time when Magic boomed in the early 90s, and it boomed so much that it busted in the mid 90s. And then towards the mid and the late 90s, Magic had a very slow recovery to what it is doing now. But it wasn't quick, and it didn't ever recover until way later on. And so like it is definitely interesting to like see these trajectories as the games age, but it's a player forward game, and Magic's died several times since then. So then when it died at that time in like the late 90s, early 2000s, it basically it died because I thought they started doing too much. Like this, they added foils to the game. And like before Magic, you think that because Pokemon was around in the 90s that Magic was doing foils the whole time. They were not. Yeah. Magic started doing foils in the year 2000. It was after this set right here. My favorite set of all time, Urza Saga, was the last set there weren't foils in. The next set in this 3-set block that came out was when they introduced premium cards, and it was 1 in 3 packs. You had a chance of getting a foil, and it was just any card in the pack could be foil. It's like a reverse holo, a modern reverse holo, basically. That's all it was. And when that happened, there was such an outcry in the Magic the Gathering community. Even me as a 12-year-old, I was like, I don't want foils in my Magic cards. That's for Pokemon. That's kids stuff. And people hated the foils. Now, the foil cards are literally the most expensive cards, and they're the cards that are holding up the value of the era of that time, the boxes, because there's something called a reserve list, and that era didn't have reserve lists. They reprint everything from that era of Magic the Gathering except the foil cards. The foil cards are a unique foiling, a unique print, a unique art that they just haven't done before. And now they're super expensive. And they didn't age well either. They get cloudy over time. And so in order to get one in good condition, it has to be packed fresh, or it has to be graded immediately. And nobody graded Magic back in the day. So that explains why if you're watching Heritage and you're seeing like foil cards go for ridiculous numbers, you're like, why is this, BGS 9, whatever, Elvish Piper foil from 8th edition, when it's a $1 Magic the Gathering card from the normal, anyone who's playing it's not worth anything. But from this one set, it's worth like $7,000. It's because of condition rarity and because of the foiling pattern. But like that was the second time Magic died, when they released foils. Then Magic died again later on in the 2000s when I felt they just started making everything overpowered. There was a certain point where I walked away from the game because the game started changing at such a rapid pace that my boomer ass at like 19 or 20 years was like, this isn't the Magic I know. I don't like this Magic anymore. It feels like a different game. I'm only going to play with my old cards. I'm not buying any of the new stuff. And I stepped away from it. To this day, I still don't touch new Magic.
You know, and that's Planeswalkers?
It was when Planeswalkers were introduced. That was actually when I stepped away. That set.
And nobody liked them,
I literally left the game. And that was another time Magic died because Modern was horrible at that time. Well, it's not as bad as it was now, but that's a whole nother situation. So my point is Magic's died many times. So what we're going through now with Magic is very nostalgic to me. I'm not fire selling that box right there because I've been through this rodeo before here, buddy. And you cannot convince me that that box right there is not peak peak nostalgia for any Magic player. So it is one of those things that with what we're seeing in the Magic community, if you're sitting there just like with wide eyes, you're watching, don't worry. Magic's died before. It ain't going nowhere. Wizards of the Coast, they can literally kill it all they want. People like me won't let it die. There are too many people out there who just have the nostalgia that just won't let it die.
Yeah, I wonder if this is like the new hollow cards. It's expensive as hell, which is bullshit. But excuse my French. But it's yeah, I think maybe this is their new collector venture. And they're gonna see how it plays out. Like everybody knows, it's gonna sell out because of what it is.
I hope it doesn't. I really hope it doesn't.
Yeah, I'd almost bet on it. I'd bet you on it, but yeah, it's gonna be crazy, man.
It's interesting because they haven't released a print run on it. And so the fact that there's no print run on it, it really does make it tough to say whether or not I think it'll sell out or not. Like if they made 10,000 of them, then it would probably sell out. But if they made 25,000 of them, I don't think it would sell out.
Do they announce print runs on everything still?
They don't renounce print runs on anything. There are no print
When
runs.
did it stop?
They
Because I know
never
they did
have.
like Arabian Nights and they announced some of the originals.
Those weren't ever announced. They were deducted through careful research and careful deductions done by the Magic community over official statements that Wizards of the Coast has made about print runs in the past, but they have never made an official statement about official print runs on any particular set. I think that what they've done is they've alluded to print runs, and they've said how many of certain cards they made in certain sets, like alpha, rares, uncommons, commons. That stuff is deduced, like you said, Arabian Nights. They've been able to, through the process of elimination, find out backtracking now how many were in there. So, but it's not because of Wizards of the Coast. Like as far as I know, there aren't many companies that actually release print runs. Like Flesh and Blood does it after they had their debacle with Monarch happen. And so the only reason Flesh and Blood does it, because they did not do it really before the whole crash and burn that happened after Monarch first edition. Basically, they overprinted that to all hell, and they weren't transparent about how much they were printing. And that crashed the market, and it made their player base demand, because of transparency, every other set gets a print run, and they started being fully transparent with that. So after the full print run is finished, after a certain like 6 months or however X amount of time, they always release a print run in Flesh and Blood, as far as I know. So I don't know any other company who does that. I think MetaZoo's done it a couple of times, but I don't think it's a regular thing.
Yeah, they do it every time.
Oh, they do? MetaZoo does?
Every time, yeah.
That's good. I wonder if that was from the beginning, the get-go, or if it was... Oh, it was. Oh.
Kickstarter first edition. Kickstarter is 2,500, 25,000 for first edition, and then it went up to 100,000. Now it's back down. This current set, or the next set's going to be down. Yeah, they announce it every time though.
Are you a collector are you a MetaZoo collector, or are you not really a buyer in that situation?
Not about. I have a few slabs just because I picked them up off Heritage when they sold on there really cheap. So no, I don't have any sealed product. Just keep up with it. I keep up with a lot of things just to know what's going on.
I've got a lot of sealed product in MetaZoo, though I haven't opened hardly any of it. And as a product of Rudy from Alpha Investments, he scammed me on those. So, it's fun. I do like the game MetaZoo, the cryptid thing, and I feel like it has a stronger player base than people like to give it credit for. And I'm not just saying that because my friend Basic Trainer plays, because yes, I'm saying that because when I went to Long Beach Collecticon and when I went to Denver Collecticon, I was specifically looking for MetaZoo players, and I found lots of them. I found a lot more MetaZoo players than I found Pokemon players. So I'm just going to throw that out there. So I know that's going to get some hate. But yeah, I personally, the print run thing, I didn't know that about MetaZoo. I know that some of them are out there. I didn't know they did it from the beginning. Do you like that? Are you a fan of that? Or do you think it's better off to have it be more like a mystique and like not be more mysterious, I guess, with it.
I
Because
like it.
maybe there are pros and cons.
I like it. I think I don't know, it just gives people something else to complain about, which is what's going to happen with it. Which it is. Like you see the stuff the ones they printed at 100,000 units. Seance, I think the Seance or UFO. I can't remember if they tapered off or Seance or UFO was the last big one, but yeah, when they said, yeah, we're making 100,000 boxes, it did not sell
I
that
think
great.
UFO was that one.
Yeah, it got wrecked.
A little better. Yeah, Sam's had the issue with the mapping of the boxes, but other than that, it was a better print. Yeah.
Yep. So it's yeah, I'm for it, but also I don't want to hear people complain about it. Just so I'd say maybe just leave it out just for that reason.
Yeah, I personally think it's a good thing. I think that the more knowledge we have about our love of TCGs, the better. I think it could get a little bit into the weeds if it were in a. I know why Pokemon doesn't do it. I know why Magic doesn't do it because they're so big they can't release a print run and then decide to change their mind and have to go back on that. So it's easier for them just to never release a print run and just do whatever the hell they want and just say, hey, that's our proprietary information. We don't have to tell you guys. Deal with it. Like that's just how the game goes. So like I get that too because I've always said the reason I don't want serialized cards to come into Pokemon is because it would limit their reprinting or limit their ability to actually reprint the game and treat the game as it was a game, and it would make it purely collectible so that after the first print run of those serialized cards were made, you could never make another print of that set. That's first edition. Those are the only, you would have to make another run of serialized cards with different numbers, different cards, and then print it again. And then it's theoretically not the same product. So I personally thought that would be bad for Pokemon because it would make it so they could never deal with a situation like we had with Vivid Voltage, Roaring Skies, Evolving Skies, any situation where these boxes of a modern set just skyrocket up and they don't need that. That's what allows them to be able to reprint it is not having serialized cards.
I think Magic. I talked to my friend who's really big into Commander, keeps up with modern sets. He doesn't play modern, but he gets modern cards out of the sets if he needs them. The way they do it, they just had another set come with numbered to 500 Magic Gathering set. You can get that same card unnumbered. So I think that would be the way to do it. Like you can get a common version of this card. Like, of course, there's 500 of them that have the numbering on them, but there's also printed to oblivion the same card in a rare. So
right, but that's not exactly what I mean. I mean more so like the print run is locked on that one through. So like, not a card skyrocketing because it's playable and you need it, but like as far as just wanting to run more because it just goes out of stock and you don't want the price to run up too much, it hamstrings your ability to really reprint to the ground. So for example, the Charizard UPCs, if they didn't print enough of the Charizard UPCs and they wanted to print more, if they had like serialized cards in them, they would not allow them to do it. So it's like, oh, well, you got what you got and you don't throw a fit. Whereas with the ability to do so, they can keep doing reprints. So it makes it so someone like me, a potential scalper on the product, can't say, oh, look, bro, that thing never getting reprinted. I can't say that. All I can say is they can do whatever they want because there's nothing stopping them. There's no numbered cards in there. But if that thing had a numbered 1 through 500 card in it, and I pulled, and especially if I knew someone pulled all 500 cards out of all of them, or even like some of them, I would be able to tell you there's no more reprints coming unless they held back some specifically to then put back on. And then I would say, oh, not everything's out there. And, then that's a different situation. So that's kind of my thought process on, and they did the scarcity chase with the alternate arts, making them as scarce and hard to pull as they are, 1 in 1,000, 1 in 2,000 packs. It's almost like they have their serialized cards without actually having to have serialized cards on it. So they, it's like they have the best of both worlds in that situation. So yeah, I think Pokemon's doing it right as far as all the other, and that's why they're on top probably. And that's why I have a Pokemon channel and not a Magic Gathering channel or Yu-Gi-Oh channel or any of the other TCG channels. It's like Pokemon is there's a reason why it's on top probably.
Yeah, a lot more people love Pokemon than everything else. So helps.
Definitely. So we have been here for almost 3 hours talking, Josh. So I'm going to start wrapping it up. But before we do wrap it up, do you have any last thoughts or any last sort of closing statements or anything you want to kind of wrap up with before we kind of do our thing here? Because I think we've kept a lot of these people, on their car rides to and from work and their packing orders and whatever they're doing while they're listening. We've given them some good content here. So I appreciate you coming on, man.
Definitely. No, it's been awesome, man. This is really good. Nothing further to add as far as hit on a lot of topics. That's for damn sure, which is good. Like talking Pokemon, talking shop, and it's good. You going to CollectCon?
I will be. And so we'll be going to Florida to vend. I have 2 tables this time. Instead of 1 table, we're upgrading to 2. And I'm doing that mostly because I was told through Nick that old school Pokemon that there's going to be the hotel is the same. It's in the convention center. So all the other Collecticons that I've been to, the other 2, the hotel was separate from the actual
Down the
convention
road,
center.
yeah.
Which is just a pain in the butt, like having to like lug your stuff and go early in the morning, but like the fact that it's in the actual, you just literally roll out of bed and go downstairs to the convention center. It makes it so appealing to me that I wouldn't miss this. This is the one that I'm more excited about than any of the other ones because of that level of like convenience that it allows. So yes, as a seller, full send, definitely going. Find me if you guys are listening to this, go find me at Orlando. But what about you? Are you going to be potentially vending? Are you going to be going or anything?
I don't know. I got a wedding I got to fly for in January, and another one I got to fly for in February. Throws a wrench into things.
Absolutely.
Having 3 flights in the first 3 months for, I guess the ones kind of work. I'll be making money, but
kind of right. These events, the sellers, we do okay, but traveling is expensive too. So like it's almost like a little bit better than a break-even situation, but it's not that, I always think about it. I'm like, I'm having a lot of fun at this. I'm doing a lot of fun here. That's what I have to justify in my head.
Yeah, I've vended. So I've gone to one as a tourist, then vended, tourist, vended, or the other way around. I've done it. I flip-flopped it every time because I love doing both. I love going to find deals, but I love also sitting at the table. It's easier for people to come find me now. So I would love to go, and if I do go, I'll be vending. Stay tuned. I don't know. We need to find out soon, though.
Well, I hope so. And we will also be doing a day or 2 at Disney after the Collecticon. So that's going to be a fun thing. Like, I don't know if you're into Disney. Some people love it. Some people hate it. I am actually not a big Disney fan, but my fiance is a huge Disney lover. So I am obligated to do Disney while we're there. So that'll be a nice little add-on. So if anyone's watching, maybe, hit us up and we'll have to somewhat collaborate or something like that. But yeah, we'll definitely look forward to hopefully seeing you in Orlando. And honestly, if you don't make it to Orlando, there's probably going to be 4 or 5 other Collecticons in the year. I'm sure we'll end up seeing you at one of those because the DaGreenshiz can't stay away from the hobby. He is one of our favorite and one of our best friends in the hobby here. And I know that for a fact he was probably going to at least go to a couple things. It may not be a Collecticon, maybe your schedule, but I'm sure we'll see you around somewhere at the hobby. I actually heard that Pat Flynn was doing like a pop-up shop situation kind of thing too. So some cool stuff going on.
Yeah, I was in California, but I didn't hear anything about vintage packs being involved, but it's some version of like a Collecticon, but not.
Yeah, no, I don't think he's going to be doing the thing with the like Leonhardt did just because I don't think that worked out. So Pat Flynn was actually there hosting the Leonhardt thing. He was one of the like 3 hosts that Leonhardt
had a
had.
microphone.
Yeah, so and he did a great job with that. So I think he saw firsthand what worked and saw what didn't work. He'll probably be able to make that. And he's also a big like marketing guy. Since it's in California, I'm going to try to make that happen in my itinerary. And so maybe, if anyone's out there watching, you're thinking about going to the Pat Flynn thing, you can see us there too. But I'm sure we'll see you at one of those events though, right?
100%, man. I love them.
And once again, we appreciate everyone who tuned in here. But about 3 hours in, I think that'll do it for the night. And we appreciate you guys coming. If you haven't already, go follow DaGreenshiz on his channel. We'll have a link down below in the description of the video. And also, please like, comment, and follow if you haven't here on this channel, because we have just crossed the 2,000 threshold. Never in 1,000 years would I have thought that would happen. And I greatly appreciate all of you guys for watching and joining along here. So until then, we will see you guys next time. Stay classy out there.